What is up, everybody? Welcome to the 31 on 31 Unholy Terror Debrief. If this is the first time you're joining us for one of these, every single October on Halloween, we do, for the past 4 years anyway, we've done a 31 on 31 video where we take 31 franchise films and we rank them all together in one massive list. And the debrief is where we go over all of our scores that we gave all the movies and do the master list where we've averaged the scores together and give the official autopsy stream ranking. Maybe argue a little bit, maybe pat each other on the back for all giving the low scores to some movies that deserved it. But nonetheless, it's always a lot of fun. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll go around the horn really quick.
Sean was just finishing up his dissertation there.
Yeah, exactly. How dare you? CP.
Hey, I was in the comments section. I was saying hey to about 10 people in a row.
If you do that, you're going to be here a while.
True.
Hi. Just to let people know how the averages work, it's basically like golf. The lowest score is the best movie. It's a combination of the four of our scores, and like essentially 4 could be the absolute lowest score that a movie could have to be top, because that would mean all of us rank at number 1. And 124 would be absolutely the worst because of 31's going all the way around. That's it. And also, production note, I would have chose from Poltergeist II, they're back to open, but, you know, it's your channel, so whatever.
I do what I want. Bryan, how you doing?
Okay, got a slip disc, so I'm sat here in quite a bit of pain. So if I get up and walk about at any point, there you go. That's the reason why.
I feel bad that Bryan has to talk about these movies again while he's in physical pain, because all it's going to do is make it flare up the more frustrated.
It's probably these movies that caused this physical pain to be honest.
He got halfway through Exorcist II. Oh!
Get a morphine drip so you can talk.
Evil dies tonight.
Boo.
Uncle Sean, how we doing?
I am doing good. As the guy that hadn't seen a bunch of these movies, I'm pretty excited to hear the different takes from everyone and battle it out over my very ignorant takes on some of them. So
No, I ignored half of these too.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be in agreement on this one for the most part.
I saw them, still ignored them.
I'll just say, Sean, that when we went into this one this year, I had literally probably only seen about 7 of these movies before.
Oh, well, then I guess I'm ahead of you on this one. Never mind what I just said.
That's painful. Hulk Smash Your Mom. That's still my favorite username. What's up, fellas? Let's get this shit started. Indeed.
All right.
So
Hold
anyway,
your horses.
guys, if you did not check out our actual edited 31 on 31 videos that we released on Halloween, go to any of our channels. I've got the links to everybody's channels down here, and you will find those. And there's a lot of different flavors that we always do. CP always goes for very high quality editing, and me and him kind of battle it out for comedy here and there. Bryan gives us a little bit different perspective on some of these, especially with this year, because he's more approaching it from a faith-based perspective.
And puts no effort into the editing whatsoever.
None.
And then Sean, as he said, is a kind of a virgin for a lot of these movies this year, so it was pretty fun for him to check all these out. So please check out all of those individually, but nonetheless, we will be talking about all 31 of these films here, starting off with what averaged, thank God, at 31 for all of us, and
Bryan
that is
almost.
Exorcist II, The Heretic. Yeah, Bryan almost messed it up for us. Me, Sean, and CP had the correct ranking. Bryan was a little bit more forgiving on it. But Exorcist II, The Heretic. I'll start with this one. This is usually every single time I go through a review series, especially in horror, there seems to always be one that everybody warns you about. Like, oh, I can't wait for that review. I can't wait for you to see that one. And almost 90% of the time, by the time I actually get to it, I'm like, it wasn't that bad. Come on. Like, it was bad, but like you guys made it like it was physically painful. Not this time. Exorcist II, The Heretic. I watched it downstairs with my wife. I was like, hey, we'll throw on this one. I've never seen it before. And this movie felt like 4 hours long with all of the weird ideas they were going for with the psychic mind meld thing. And now Reagan has these psychic powers where she can like heal people. There's a whole thing with grasshoppers and how that fits into the world. There's a succubus that takes over the body of, what is she, like 14 in this movie, and like portrays her like she's a 21-year-old hooker. It's just, it's baffling. As a sequel to The Exorcist, like I've said this a couple times, this is not the worst horror sequel I've ever seen, but this is the worst idea for a horror sequel that I've ever seen. How you can look at The Exorcist and say, I've got an idea how to follow this up, and went with this one.
Hey guys.
Yeah. I have no idea. Sean,
and it's from the director of Deliverance. I think that's the thing that just kind of elevates how bad it is. If you're like, how did a legendary director go from like Best Picture to this? And I went into it like having not remembering that this was one of the ones that had a terrible reputation. I was like, okay, Exorcist II. I've never seen this one. Let's see what happens. And almost immediately, what is going on? And that never ends. Like the whole movie, you're like, what is happening? Like, this makes no sense. Why would you do this? Any of it?
Yeah, Bryan.
But I thought it was great.
Yeah. Bryan, was this the first time watch for you?
This is the first time watch. It took me 3 nights to get through this bad boy. It's just, it just didn't ever want to end. I'd spent most of the time questioning why we were staring at a grasshopper's butt flying through the air, a locust. I'm just
that's the difference between me and you. That was my favorite part.
Yeah, no, I had to pause for that.
It's like that crazy ass score from it was Ennio Morricone.
It was like uplifting at times when it was supposed to be scary. And
this dude is one of the best film score composers ever, and he's just made this bizarre. It's just the most weird ass score I've ever heard in my life. And yeah, why am I staring at a locust behind for most of the film? I don't make. Yeah, I'll say right now, the bottom 10 of these movies all could have taken the 31 position. Quite frankly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Me, but...
I agree with that. You could hopscotch a bunch of them.
Yeah, bottom 15 actually could have.
That's how the middle of this list was for me. I had like a hard bottom 5, a hard top 7, and everything in the middle was like.
You had a hard top 7.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought there's a lot of good ones in here. I'd agree with Cody.
This was the worst one for me.
How dare
Out of all the 31s we've done, this was the worst.
Well, after
one.
last year, you deserve it. Dale Strunk with 999. Sorry, Dale. Reliable Dale comes in. Evil Dies Tonight. Love and appreciate these videos. Thank you, Michael.
Put a shirt on, mate. Put a shirt on.
There we go. Oh, CP, any more thoughts on 2?
I like that the thing that Bryan went to was the locust ass, and the thing that I forever attribute to that movie is Nurse Ratched getting felt up by 2 young girls.
You had that whole edit in your video, and I was like, I never even noticed that. Like, it was right there.
Dude, and they're like 2 hands just throbbing her tit. I'm like, what the fuck is
this? Speaking of what the fuck is this, our number 30, Omen IV: The Awakening. This was Bryan's worst. This was the one that Bryan warned me about the most, so I had extremely low expectations. And me and CP agreed. So, Omen IV: The Awakening. Sean, I'll let you start this one.
This one was actually it's a very bad, but a lot more watchable than Exorcist II because it's so comedically bad.
Oh, yeah.
Between the hilarious music cues, the attempts to be shocking without being able to, while having to fit to the censors. So it's like a kid peeing his pants with whimsical music playing, the guy in slow-mo getting hit by the wrecking ball. Like, that's the shocking moments. It's horrible, but it loops back around. It's so bad it's good at times because it's trying to do the Omen for television. And like I legitimately would love to have a sit down with whoever did the music for this one. Like, how did you come up with that? Like, how did you guys approve that? Why did you think that fit this movie.
I was supposed to do Family Matters, and they switched last second on me.
That's
So
what it feels like. My favorite part of that whole movie is the first kill where the guy is like, he's driving out of the driveway going like 1 mile an hour, and he looks over at Delia and locks eyes with her and then turns and then gets decapitated like he's going like 50. Like he's literally like driving like this fast. And he's like, ah! And then he just takes his whole top of his car off. This movie came very close to being so bad that it's good and almost went up a couple spots for that, but it didn't quite get there for me. Bryan, I don't think gets enjoyment out of this whatsoever because he gave me warnings. Actually, Omen IV, I think, might have screwed up the original 31 because I had another franchise in here in place of Blair Witch, and Bryan messaged me and corrected me. He's like, there's an Omen 4, right? And I was like, are you serious? And he goes, yes. And it's shit. And that was all I knew about the movie. Bryan, Omen 4, The Awakening.
Like, this movie should not exist. It should not exist. And I don't mean that in it's a bad movie, so it shouldn't exist. I mean, it literally should not exist. Because the first 3 Omen movies go along the basis that everything in the Bible is true. And we end the 3rd movie with Revelation, with Jesus coming back and ending it up. So it literally should not exist, okay? Unless you're saying this is just an out-and-out remake, the other 3 don't exist, this isn't part 4, this is just a new version, fine. But they don't. They say, no, this is the legacy of those first 3 movies. Everyone's going about the business as if Revelation never happened. It's just... What? So yeah, apparently the one thing that can fight Christ and his return is spiritualism. It's just total utter bollocks. The very definition of bollocks. Yeah, it's a badly made film in every sense of the word. And the only reason that I didn't put Exorcist II in this position was because it's a better made film in the sense of, camera work, effects work, everything that goes into filmmaking. It's still a terrible, terrible movie, but like it's a very, very fine line.
We'll just film in a room full of octagon windows. That will be fine.
CP, how was that, or Omen 4 for you?
I'm gonna agree with Bryan here because I'm not that spiritual whatsoever, but if you're gonna end Omen 3 with Christ coming back, that's it, you're done.
And swelling music with the return, triumphant swelling music.
Yeah. What can we use to defeat Christ? Gender swap of problem child. That's it. And her in the school when she's like beating that kid with the lunchbox, it's just like comical. It's like, somebody stop this. What is this?
What is happening here? Desi said CP's edit of Lay Your Hands on Me was fantastic.
Cheers.
CBMF, what score is worse, Exorcist 2 or Omen 4? So glad the debriefs are back. They're both terrible, but Omen 4 makes 0 sense the entire time. It literally sounds like the big comfy couch or Sesame Street or something.
Yeah, it destroys
right after shooting somebody.
Yep.
Yeah. The crazy music in Exorcist 2, is really crazy. But at least when they're in Africa, it's using African instruments, so I get why it's like crazy African music, but it's still terrible.
Daniel, D-Day was a couple of decades before 2002. I'm just want to clarify that.
That's true.
I know what you're saying, but
there you go. You look fantastic. Dale Strunk felt generous, so I'm dropping another one. Love hearing you guys riff on bad movies. Rock on forever. Thank you, Dale. Old reliable Dale. So moving on to 29. We have Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, to where we almost all agreed that Sean wanted to give some positivity. Now, this was another movie that I had heard for years was abysmal, but I am not a fan, as we'll find out very soon, of any of the Blair Witch movies, so I never had the interest to check it out because, to me, even the best of this franchise, was a movie that I don't like. So I walked into this, didn't have any expectations. And supposedly there's like a director's cut possibility out there to where this was just like a studio mess that he had one vision, the studio turned it into something else. And I'd be curious enough to check out what that is just for don't know, masochism, I guess.
I hope
But,
Zack Snyder's happy, because now we're getting all this shit going on.
Yeah, look what you've done. But this movie was just incoherent to me. Like, it wasn't something that was just abysmal on the level of the two films below it to where I just baffled at what happened. This was a movie I could tell had an idea, but the end product that we had was just scenes. It was just characters. They started off telling you who lives, and then it's supposed to be tense throughout figuring out who's going to live, and it's like, you already told us. All these characters are just going into madness, and so you're kind of experiencing the same thing as you watch it, to where you really have no idea what the story is even trying to tell you. Is it a commentary on Blair Witch? Is it a sequel to Blair Witch? Is it just something using the name? It's kind of all of that. TP?
It's a neat theory. Like, the movie's about the capitalization of the success of Blair Witch, and that's where my compliments end. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many things where you're like, wait a minute, like the tour guide or whatever the fuck with his army painted van, that was his first tour, but he was fighting with the other tour people, like they've been there 1,000 times before, and it's like, wait a minute, this is your first one. What ground are you laying claim to? If that was the only thing I had a problem with, I'd feel much better.
That was my only issue with the film. That's why I have it number 24.
I had at least 4 different people leading up to this review leave me the same exact comment, which is why I thought it was funny to kind of go into the movie expecting this. And it also told me that there's not really anything else looking forward to. I had 4 different people, knowing that I was going to watch this movie, tell me, at least you get to see the thick goth chick. That was all the praise that I got. Like, at least there's a chick in there who's thick. It's like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, Emily complained. She was watching over my... She didn't watch the whole thing, so she watched over my shoulder. She goes, hey, look, it's every rich white man's idea of what a witch should look like.
Bryan, thoughts on the thick gothic chick? I mean, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
I couldn't tell you, because I have no recollection of this movie other than the fact that...
Neither did the cast.
Yeah. When I saw it at the cinema, I remember it being really, really bad. I remember wanting to walk out, but the friend I was with wanted to stay, so I kind of got suckered into staying and watching it. Because of that, I had no compulsion to revisit it when we did this 31 on 31. So this was kind of the film on the list that I kind of just... A bit like a dart, I just threw it, and wherever it stuck towards the bottom, I'm like, fine, it'll do there. But,
I did that like 20 times. I don't know.
Sean, you had it a bit higher.
Yeah. Yeah, just some of it's just aesthetically speaking. This era of movies is a little bit more my pace of horror films just because of my age.
It does have a movie music video style to it. I'll give you that. No,
it's
sincerely.
But see, like you watch Exorcist II and it feels like it's 4 hours long and bad. Yeah. This one isn't good, but it doesn't feel 4 hours long. Some of it's also a recurring theme on a lot of these is Joe Blow has a series called WTF That Movie where they talk about the background on the movie. And some of that makes these movies more interesting for me. Like literally half the movies on this list, Omen, Poltergeist, they have backstories on what on the making of them. Exorcist, a bunch of the Exorcist prequel one, and so just the backstory on what happened, what the director was trying to do with the movie, and then the producers took over. There's just a lot of stuff that makes the movie interesting to me, not good, and I don't. It's even some of the confusion and what's going on and why did they reveal everything at the beginning. That's because that's not what the director intended. So I don't know if his version would how much better it would be, but I'd be curious to see it.
Yeah, they did really rush that movie out too because they were like, "It's making money. Hurry." Is it
we want to print movie no matter what we put out. We got to get this out by next Halloween.
We have the title. It's going out. That's it. But I only have 10 minutes.
We forgot about the book. Screw it. Put it out.
But yeah, I mean, you can see a movie that's blatantly working against itself because the director wants to comment on the exploitation of Blair Witch and its fandom. And the producers want to exploit the fandom.
Right.
Immediately you're like, you're fighting yourself.
Hey, Patrick, hope you're having that 8:30 res at Dorsia still.
Yeah, Patrick Bateman, I'm having a bad day. Just wanted to say thank you guys for making it better. We'll just put on some Phil Collins or some Huey Lewis in the News, and you will be just fine.
Sea urchin ceviche.
There you go. 28, Omen 3, The Final Conflict, the Sam Neill one. This one I had a lot more expectations for just because of Sam Neill, and man, was I let down.
Dude,
So we were pretty close in this one. Brian, I'll let you start with this one because you kind of warned me about this, and I think you were the one that only experienced all of the Omen films of all four of us. So where does Omen 3 just go wrong?
It's just, I wouldn't say Sam Neill is a bad actor, but if I'd have never have seen anything with him in except this, I would tell you he was a terrible actor. It's just those scenes where he's got a monologue to the statue of Christ, and it's just like whoever was directing him just said, "Go bigger, no, go bigger,
Yeah.
look a bit bigger."
Yeah, and Jennifer Tilly.
Really large, and it's just like, what is he doing? And I feel embarrassed for him. I hate it when you're watching a film and you literally feel embarrassed for the actor.
See, Brian, let me ask you something. You're the only one that's genuine. Well, I've shot, but I never gone finished. How much is on the actor and how much is on the director? Because sometimes the director should be able to pull the actor aside and be like, "Hey, I know what you're trying for, but take a step back."
All I know is Sam Neill isn't a bad actor. He's a good actor.
No, I agree.
He's
So perhaps it's
so
the
that
director?
should tell you. So that should tell you something. It tells you it's the director's fault. If the director doesn't know how to calm an actor down or how to coax him a different way, then they're a crap director. They don't know what they're doing. And a lot of it isn't just down to what you tell the actor to do. It's how you place the camera. If you've got someone on a big wide, you can see all of their body language. So that if they're in a position where they just look embarrassed physically, because the performance is all about body language as well, then perhaps you should be in on a close-up and getting whatever they're doing facially.
Absolutely.
But sometimes if you're going in on a close-up when you really shouldn't because they're so exaggerated, and you might let's tone it down a bit by coming out. Let's come out. Yeah, so it's just I think it's all on the director there, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disjoint you there.
My main issue with this movie, I mean, aside from the fact I was disappointed because I really like Sam Neill. I mean, Jurassic Park, even movies like Daybreakers that are more recently, I think he's always pretty damn good.
He's good in that new Apple show, Invasion.
Yeah, he's
That's
still
a
working.
thing.
I mean,
So yes.
yeah. I haven't experienced any Apple shows, but they look production-wise pretty amazing. But I expected, if nothing else, he would be the one positive I walked away with, and I was a little shocked that he was one of my main negatives. But the main problem I had with this movie overall is that, not that I want them to do the same thing over and over and over again for as many Omen movies, but when you have a movie that's based off of a creepy kid concept and then you make him an adult, it just kind of turns into a political thriller.
Yeah.
And
Just the idea gets lost.
Yeah, exactly. And so all the accidental deaths, like all of the things that you kind of go to an Omen movie for, they all kind of get dissipated in this movie. And then the conclusion itself, we've known for 3 movies now, he has to be stabbed with all of these knives in a certain way, and everybody that even thinks about that gets killed instantly, and then just random chick that's introduced in this movie just stabs him once, and that's it. To me, very weak ending. So yeah, this was a big disappointment for me.
The dogs on the bridge, I was just like, oh, what?
Get it.
What are you doing? Go.
Exactly. Oh man, number 27. I don't even think we have much to say about this one.
Nope.
The Nun.
How do I
can
have it
sum
near
this
the
up.
highest? What the?
Huh?
I hated that movie. I'm almost the highest ranked. What the hell did I do?
That's how this list goes sometimes.
One word.
None.
Generic.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Just generic.
Just go to a creepy place at a creepy location and just things jump out for 2 hours and then the credits roll. And let's awkwardly cast the sister of the star of the franchise, who looks exactly like her, just younger. I legit, and the movie starts off with Vera Farmiga. It shows her, and then it cuts to her sister, and you're like, oh, is this like younger her?
I thought the same thing.
No,
I was like,
I think everybody thought that, or that was going to be the twist, that it was her or some descendant. Nope.
There's billions of ladies on this planet. Why would you pick the one that looks like Vera Farmiga? Yeah. Why?
I thought she was going to be the nun. I thought the reason this nun character was haunting Vera Farmiga's character is because she's some kind of distant relative. But no, just totally wasted that casting, big time. Wow.
Yep. The Nun. That's about it. Poltergeist III. Now, this was a movie that I had seen before as a kid, but it's always had this ickiness to it because even as a kid, I knew a rough idea of what the little girl went through. For those that don't know, she had some kind of an infection from drinking well water and slowly started to die throughout the production of this movie and then died before it even got released. So knowing that, it makes the movie very uncomfortable to watch, even if it was halfway decent, but it's not halfway decent. It's very TV quality. They take it into the high rise, lose all of the cool small town aesthetic from the first two movies. You lose everybody but Carol Ann, and they replace them with just very strange casting. You got Tom Skerritt, you got
Wayne's girlfriend.
Thank you. Yeah, you got all of that. So,
and the parents from the first two movies do not strike me as the kind of people
just abandon their daughter.
They fought hard for two movies, but I'm done. No more of this shit.
Yeah. So all we get is Tangina, I believe is her name. All we get is return is her. I don't like the way that they utilize her here. I think that there's some good practical effects in the movie with
that's the win.
Yeah. Yes, with like the frost atmosphere that they go for, and some of the
mirror stuff.
A lot of practical stuff with mirrors. I actually like it when they do stuff practically and it's pulled off. I actually want to correct something. Somebody called me out on my video. I said that the little girl worked her ass off, and I didn't. Somebody said that was a little distasteful, considering how she died. I didn't mean. Literally,
no, that doesn't even need to be explained.
Well, you would think, but I did not mean that in like a dark, sadistic way. I just meant she worked hard while it's sick, and that.
I also don't know why they take someone from the second film who is actually quite menacing and quite creepy and a pretty decent villain, and then recast him with some generic actor who's just there because he's old.
The guy died. The guy from 2 died.
No excuses. Why did they recast him? Come on.
Come on. If you can't get Kane back, you come up with something new.
Yeah, either come up with something new or find some creepy old guy who. There's loads of creepy old dudes out there who put the chill in me. It's like just. Find one. Don't get some nice-looking dude who's got no menace about him whatsoever.
And if you want to kill one of your buddies, play a drinking game and have them drink every time the name Carol Ann is said. You'll kill him.
Carol Ann!
Desi says The Nun was the most infuriating movie I'd seen in a long time. I had so much potential. My most anticipated that year over Halloween. Walked out angry. I can imagine. Moving on from that, we have Exorcist the Beginning, which I had a little bit higher, not too much higher, but this is one of 2 of the Exorcist prequels, and apparently the group average has this one as the lower of the 2. So for those that don't know, quick little backstory, they went to do an Exorcist prequel to make money off the name, basically, and they had the whole movie Dominion, that we'll get into in a little bit, that was shot, went into the editing room, studio said, what is this? We don't want it. They got Rennie Harlan to come back for initially just reshoots, and then they decided to reshoot the entire movie and with the same star. So you have 2 Exorcist movies that have the same skeleton plot but are extremely different with the same lead actor, Stellan Skarsgård. So
they didn't reshoot the whole movie. They do use
about
90%.
Yeah.
This just Schrader's version's better.
The 2, I mean, the next one is Dominion, so we can kind of talk about them together. So Brian had that one quite a bit higher for everybody. So we have Exorcist just barely beat out by Dominion. And the main two differences is that you have one that is a little bit more of a dramatic exploration of loss of faith with Father Merrin. It's a little bit more of a drama that doesn't really feel necessarily like a prequel to The Exorcist, even by the end when you have the bald guy in the diaper kind of floating around as the demon and all of that stuff. So Dominion feels like a better made movie, and certainly Stellan Skarsgård's performance is better in that one. Exorcist the Beginning, I would argue, feels more appropriate as an Exorcist prequel, quality notwithstanding. That movie is definitely horror. It tries to go for shock value almost too much in it to have horror. They had made a big pendulum swing. And I think the third act, despite the really embarrassing like hallway sequence where Pazuzu's running like this, I thought that the third act was pretty cool, getting the voice pretty close, getting the look of Pazuzu to be close to the first movie. On Natalia, I can never remember the
Did you say you thought the beginning was a more suitable sequel to The Exorcist?
I don't think either of them are a suitable prequel, but I think one of them leads more directly into the first movie as far as the visuals and the atmosphere and the tone of a horror film.
And you think that's the beginning, not Dominion?
Correct.
Well, nothing.
Dominion to me is not very. That's more dramatic. It's not really. It doesn't even really have too much tension or any horror feeling to it. Even in the third act,
the original Exorcist film it's a character study. It's a character-driven piece. Above all the horror elements that have become famous, it is predominantly a character study of a priest who's lost his faith. And that's exactly what Paul Schrader's Dominion is. And it's much more in keeping with that original Exorcist film as far as I'm concerned. Whereas what The Beginning does is it takes all the moments that have become iconic, the possession moments, which are actually, when you look at that original Exorcist film, are actually few and far between in comparison to all the character stuff. Mm-hmm. It takes all those moments and it says, yeah, let's make a film of all that. So to me, it's actually a lot further from being in line with the original Exorcist film than what Dominion is. I think Dominion has much more in comparison with that original Exorcist film, personally. But
I understand that. I think it depends on what you walked into expecting. See, when the first Exorcist movie, the whole opening in Africa and the excavation and all of that, and then it pauses on that lingering shot of Father Merrin staring at that statue of Pazuzu, giving you this kind of sense that there's some kind of a past there. To me, Exorcist the Beginning shows you that past, his first encounter with that actual demon. Whereas Dominion, it doesn't even reference Pazuzu. It more is just, like you said, story-wise, maybe has more through lines, being that it's about his loss of faith and his regain of faith by the end of it, leading into him being the guy that comes in and takes down Pazuzu in the first movie. But just the lingering question for me that I wanted a prequel to answer is, what happened with Pazuzu and Father Merrin? And I only get that in one of these. Neither one of them do it well. I didn't really care for either one of them, but that's just kind of how I looked at it. Sean, I think you might have been a little bit higher on Dominion as well. Let me double check. Exorcist,
not much higher, but yeah.
Just a tiny bit. What did you prefer about Dominion over Exorcist the Beginning?
I just kind of, probably the World War II stuff. I just felt more tonally consistent. I think showing the incident that would break a man of faith's, break his faith. I think that kind of elevated it. And I think just tonally, it makes more sense. Rennie Harlan, thoroughly enjoyed Die Hard 2. Cliffhanger's great.
Long Kiss Goodnight is awesome.
Did he do a Nightmare on Elm Street? One of the Nightmare on Elm Street?
He did, yeah.
That's not the guy that I think. You know who would capture the tone? Oh, in Deep Blue Sea.
The Deep Blue Sea guy.
Of course. Yeah. Like Deep Blue Sea guy, he could probably do a killer prequel to Exorcist. And you watch this movie, and the way the horror's done is kind of shock value. And then it adds a bunch of like big sweeping action sequences and things like that just feel like this is kind of a weird direction to take this. Until you go, oh, it's Rennie Harlan. Yeah, that's what he would do, of course. So I just thought that it wasn't as cohesive. It didn't make as much sense, and I didn't particularly enjoy either one of these. all that much. They kind of remind me in a certain sense, like kind of like The Nun, of like, let's just send people off to this place that's different from where the other stuff takes place, and it's just kind of mush to me.
CP, I think you had Dominion a little higher too, didn't you?
I essentially had them in a tie because
I pretty much did too. They were right next to each other.
When I think of biblical stories, I do not think of the Middle East. I think of octagon-shaped rooms with glass.
I do not think of the place where Jesus was crucified, which was in the Middle East. I think of the West.
I think of sci-fi octagon rooms with glass in them. That's what I. Sorry, that's my.
Daniel Skinner, you forgot to include cliffhanger in your comment there.
You also forgot Nightmare on Elm Street 4, though. I understand.
He seems very confused in his comment.
I think the best thing about the beginning is the recasting of the woman. I think Isabella Scorupco is far better in that role. But I do think, like Sean said, that opening up with that really long intro where you linger on everything that's going on with those Nazis, letting it breathe, is just boom, right from the off. You know exactly where this character is. Yeah. Whereas in the beginning, that sequence is broken up into snippets, like a music video, and it's put somewhere more towards the middle of the film, and it's just, start with that. You know where we're going. We know what it's about.
Exactly.
Much better.
I hear you. Anthony, thanks guys for going through these franchises. Hot take, I enjoyed Book of Shadows. Not a great movie, but very watchable at least. Watchable does not equal good, unfortunately.
That's usually what my list is. My list usually isn't quality. It's will I watch it again? Which would I most watch again?
All right. Moving on from Dominion and Exorcist the Beginning, we have The Curse of La Llorona.
Shit, I should have gave you that clip.
So Bryan had this one much lower than the rest of us, so I'm going to cut to Bryan and tell me why. I know you pretty much said a lot of these are tied, so it probably doesn't matter. It's probably a dartboard decision, but why was La Llorona so much lower for you?
It's just forgettable. It's like I watched it about 2 months before I did the 31 on 31. And then when it came to doing the 31 on 31, I was like, what happened in this movie?
It had the Texas Chainsaw 3 effect on you.
Yeah. And I had to Google it, and then I realised What's-Her-Face was in it. I was like, oh, yeah, I remember her being in it. What did she do? So it was just, it's like everybody rags on Annabelle. Which is essentially the same kind of thing, a mother trying to protect her child from an evil spirit. But I remember Annabelle. There are scenes in that stick with me. So that's got to count for something.
Yeah. This was one of, if not, I mean, definitely next to The Nun is the most forgettable, at least. The weird thing about this movie is they never even advertised it as a Conjuring movie. It didn't say from the Conjuring universe or anything.
Yeah, you could have made extra money on that, too. Yeah.
That's the weird thing. It's not like they're trying to hide the fact that it's a Conjuring movie. You got a character from one of the other movies in here, and they include it with all the press releases and the Blu-ray sets and everything. So it was strange that I didn't find out this was a Conjuring movie until months later, because I was in no hurry when I watched it at home, and I'm like, oh. And then retroactively, they started putting it on the posters and the Blu-ray, like, from the Conjuring universe, Curse of La Llorona. Sean, La Llorona, how was your experience?
I mean, it's generic, it's forgettable, and I think the cast is why it kind of moved up a little bit. I mean, Linda Cardellini's obviously just good at stuff. And then I thought Raymond Cruz in the third act is actually what kind of makes it memorable for me. He's giving this performance that I think he's phoning it in, but for whatever reason, the deadpan just works with it.
Oh, ta-da! Yeah, that dude.
It's because he's usually so
Tuco is so cracked out that when he's like just totally chilling this, ta-da!
Even in Training Day, he's like on cocaine the whole scene.
I got my shit pushed in.
But so that in this, where he's just cracking these little dry one-liners. Oh, I was afraid too. No, I wasn't. All that stuff, that was my favorite stuff of the movie. And that's to what kind of, for me, pushed it above Annabelle and The Nun and things like that. The actual plot itself, the script on paper, just as generic as those films, but it was those two leads that moved it up for me.
Yep. And it was so good that they gave this guy the third Conjuring movie to make.
Oh,
Poltergeist, the remake. I know whenever you sent me this, I got screwed up, thought this was the original. I was like, how did it get that out?
That's what I looked at. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. What happened?
I should have gave you the note.
So we were pretty close on this one. I saw this. I didn't give it a chance in theaters. I saw it the week that it came out. And honestly, the only reason I was interested in it is Sam Rockwell. I love that guy. I think that even in bad movies, he's the shining light, and that pretty much is what this is. It's a very generic, kind of shallow, modernized version of Poltergeist. Not really a whole lot new or different or better here. Sam Rockwell tries his best. I don't know why he decided to do this, because he usually picks very good projects, but it's not a movie I think is terrible. It's not something where if I watch it, I'm like, this just destroys the legacy of the original, but very similar to the Omen. I just doesn't really feel like it has a reason to exist. So, Sean, I know you watched all of the Poltergeist movies for the first time. So how did you feel after really enjoying the first one and then getting to this one?
It's weird because, I mean, it's perfectly a slick 21st century production. So it's competent in that regard. But like it's like clearly they wanted to do the exact same movie, but they knew they had to change things. And every change they made was just simplifying the story and adding things that don't really even make sense. So like the husband is unemployed, but he bought a house. How?
Yeah.
How do you buy a house when you're unemployed?
And he buys a drone too. You buy a drone for the kid and an iPad. Yeah, just
he brings home all this shiny shit, and the wife's like, "Are you out of your damn mind? What are you
doing?"
doing?"
I mean, it's like stuff that like just it kind of doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make the story better. Part of the cohesiveness of the original was the dad was selling houses, and like it all kind of tied together, and so the reveals about what their house was built on. It's a series of reveals, and here it's like the dad's not involved in that, so you can't slowly trickle that information. So they just casually in a conversation are like, by the way, yeah, they built on top of a cemetery in the middle of the movie. They just kind of say that. It's like what that was like the payoff. That was kind of the mystery of what's going on, and like you just kind of dropped it. And so, for all the new slick 21st century visual effects, all of it's just less effective, and the reworking of things just dumbed it down.
Yeah, accelerated elements like that. They were so heavy on the clown.
Yeah,
it's like the clown wasn't that big a deal in the original, and the tree was a little excessive in comparison to the original. The way it sucks the kid up and like it swallows him, or I forgot what the hell the tree does. But yeah, Sam Rockwell was quite impressive. It's just the what's his name? He's the guy in the wheelchair in the Resident Evil movie.
Jared Harris.
Yeah. When he's like, he's a grifter, but he actually is there to do a fucking exorcism or whatever. It's just like, wait a minute. I don't understand.
Well, I think that's the other thing about this one is like they shaved off all the weirdness, kind of the oddities of the original, and kind of gave it a flavor. So Tangina is this weird character. It's like this 4 foot tall. So I watched it with my daughter, and so she walks out, and my daughter's like, "What's the deal?" And she's 7 years old, so that's the in your face, direct, blunt observation. She's like, why is that a full-grown woman, but she's talking with such the voice of a child? But there's like something weird about her that makes her interesting, and they replace her with Jared Harris, who is, of course, a great actor. I have no problems with him, but he's a great actor, and therefore the character just feels like boilerplate, generic expert guy that comes in. There's nothing that stands out about it. It's not interesting.
Exactly. Bryan, any thoughts before we move on? Or you pretty much agree?
Pretty much said it, but you can throw that comment up there by Pumpkin Cake. Let's respond to that one.
Clearly, you guys need to watch Omen 3 again. Revelation didn't happen there either. Damien didn't fulfill Bible prophecy, and he only died with one dagger, meaning he could return, hence Omen 4. But he didn't return in Omen 4. But nonetheless, Bryan, I know you want to take this one. Guys, you want to take a break real quick and come back?
Jesus returned. When Jesus returns, according to the Bible, that's Revelation. Game over. Done. Dusted. Devil thrown into a fiery pit. All that stuff. You know, it's like, if Revelation didn't happen, then don't tell us at the end of your movie that Jesus comes back. Okay? Suck it.
I have a degree in Bible. I agree with Bryan.
And there you go. I will defer to the experts.
I've been to hotels that have the Bible.
Yeah.
La Llorona
I'm definitely not an expert in Revelation, so I probably shouldn't use my authority in that manner. But I'll just agree with Bryan that way.
La Llorona may be bad, but we get to see Tuco redeem himself as a priest. There we go. Jake, I was 8 years old when I saw Insidious for the first time in the theater, so that is really high on my list for scaring the shit out of me. LMAO. Keep up the great work, guys. Thank you so much. We got one more. Sucky opinions. Hey guys, off-topic opinion on the Predator prequel. 300 years ago, a warrior protects her tribe from the Predator, director of 10 Cloverfield Lane. Excited for the premise in a different era. I don't want to get off topic, so I'll just quickly say I hope it's good. It sounds interesting. They better be good.
I like the director they got.
Yes.
That's what gives me hope.
I like Shane Black for fucking the Predator.
I know. We'll see. We'll see. Annabelle. This one we were kind of all over the place on. Sean had it pretty close to the bottom. I was a little bit more in the middle. CP and Bryan had a little bit higher. Surprisingly, CP had it the highest. I thought Bryan was going to be the ultimate defender of Annabelle. What I will say about this movie, even though I still had it on the lower end, is that I've never thought this movie had deserved all of the hate that it got. It's certainly not on the level of The Conjuring, and maybe coming out immediately after The Conjuring merited that kind of comparison. But this was one of those movies, like I was talking about with Exorcist II, where so many people said that it was the most abysmal thing ever. And I watched it and I'm like, I wouldn't say this is great, but it's okay. It's an okay little haunted house movie. There's some good scares here and there. And I think actually that Annabelle creation makes it a little bit better because of the way that it leads up into the events of Annabelle. So maybe that's also a little bit of a hindsight thing there. But Bryan, I know you were pretty passionate on defending this one from a lot of the hate. So Annabelle.
Yeah, it's just we live in that world now, don't we? Where it's just like something's either the best film ever made or the worst film ever made, and there's no room anymore for
I agree with that
three-star
sentiment.
movies. It's like there's nothing wrong with a 3-star movie. There's nothing wrong with saying it's got some flaws, but I enjoyed it. It passed the time quite nicely.
You haven't
I'll
been on the
probably
internet,
watch
have
it
you?
again at some point. But it's just like, no, you can't have that opinion. You've either got to say it's absolute garbage and just shred it, or say it's like there's nothing better than this ever. And it's just like Annabelle creation. Like the only reason I wanted to watch Annabelle is because everyone was saying, Annabelle recreation, that's the one you've got to get to. It's just like on another level. And I'm like, yeah, it was good. It's very good, Annabelle creation. It's got a lot of flaws, but I watched Annabelle to get to that, and I'm like, where's this 1-star dumpster fire that I was expecting to see? Because everyone was like, there's two horror scenes in it that I thought were really effective, very well directed. You know, the scene at the house towards the beginning, when it's all done in one shot and it's going from the one house to the other, I thought was really tense. I thought the director knew how to keep that tension going. It's just, it's got a lot of merits. I like the central character and the story of her trying to protect her child. I remember it, so that's a good sign. So it's not the 1-star movie I was expecting to see. It's a solid 3-star film. It's nothing special, but that doesn't mean it's the worst film ever made.
Agree. Any more thoughts on Annabelle?
I do think it's the worst movie ever made. Now, I'll just reverse what Bryan said about that way. Bryan said about Curse of La Llorona. I guess we're just just the reverse of that. I thought this was the generic forgettable one, whereas Tuco kind of elevated that one for me. Some of the sequences elevated this one for him. That's it.
I feel like the Conjuring CU has different, like, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And, this phase isn't as bad. I mean, when you think about the fact that Conjuring 3, The Nun, and La Llorona were the most recent Conjuring universe movies, it's, they're stepping off a little bit. And then I don't know. This is just a middle tier where I'm like,
As soon as James Wan parts ways, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
going to get rough. Number 20 ended up being Insidious 4, The Last Key. And me and Bryan agreed, and Sean and CP agreed. So two different camps, worst thing ever, and then pretty mediocre thing ever. But Insidious 4 I saw in theaters. It was one of those January horror films, and at the time I thought it was clearly the worst of the Insidious movies, while still being watchable, still being okay. And on rewatch, I actually bumped this one just above Insidious 2 for me, for reasons we'll get into in Insidious 2. But this is a decent, passable Insidious movie. I'm only really curious for how they're going to continue these movies, because now Patrick, what is his last name? The guy that plays Ed Warren.
Wilson?
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick
Thank you.
Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say Patrick Stewart. I'm like, that's not right. Don't say that live.
It's a slightly different.
Yeah, very different movies. Patrick Wilson's supposed to be directing the fifth one, but this one, it's diving more into that origin story, prequel stuff regarding Elise, which she is kind of the heart and soul of the franchise, and they probably kicked themselves in the ass for killing her in the first movie for that reason. Now they all have to do prequels. I thought that the little key monster thing was a cool, unique design. Other than that, generic haunted house stuff for the most part. It was okay. It was passable. I had an okay time with it, but let me see who had it. So me and Bryan kind of we're in that same realm of it's decent enough. CP and Sean a little bit lower on it. CP, just by the face alone, what's your thoughts on Insidious 4?
Lynn Shay, yeah, she was on it, right?
Sean, pick up where he left off.
Yeah, I
Lynn
think
Shay is in fact in it.
it's true. I think there's a lot of good ideas here, and if you're gonna make her the star, really make her the star to explore a story. So I think all those are kind of good ideas. But I think it's just kind of in the execution. It's very awkward with the way that it's structured, the way that when it does its reveals, it's just weird. It does some of these big, gigantic family connections. And like they introduce this, what is it, the niece, and then a scene, we like only meet her, and then a scene later, she like takes over on the story to do like this multi-generational rescue mission and stuff without really doing anything to set her up. And so I didn't think it was executed very well. The ideas, I go, yeah, on paper, I can see why that's a good idea, but I didn't think it came together. It's also one of the worst experiences I had in the theater. Obviously, January horror crowds can be interesting. So in front of me was a group of high school dudes. They were just so obnoxious. Before the movie starts, they're just sitting there watching porn on their phones. So that sets the tone for the theater. And then halfway through the movie, and they're talking, it's rowdy the whole time, and you get to the part where the girl gets kidnapped, and she's like laying on a table, and the movie's not really sexualizing her at all, but she's on a table so you can see the curves of her body. And so every time it cuts to this girl, they start playing some meme on their phone that's something like, I got a boner, or something like that. So when they first,
the greatest theater experience to me, but I don't know.
And so that this happens the first time, I'm like, what was that? And they keep playing it louder every time she shows up, and then they start doing it every time Lynn Shay appears on screen, which is of course the rest of the movie. So
these kids are geniuses. We need to find them and give them a spot.
Movie's very memorable for me, but maybe for the wrong reasons.
Isn't it funny too that when
You remember
you
the porn
experience the
scene
movie,
from Insidious 4? What?
Isn't it funny when you watch a movie like that with a weird experience, and that you can never watch it without thinking about it.
Right,
so
right.
Every single time you rewatch this movie, your head's gonna go, "I got a boner right now," no matter how many times you watch it.
Yeah, Emily forever ruined Dark Knight Rises for me because every time.
No, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's I just
No, you're
move
right.
on.
You're
Move
right.
on.
Okay, Brian, she
Move on.
ruined Die Hard too.
Yeah. She sometimes it's just like get out. I don't care how you feel. Just get out. I enjoy this.
Don't say a word.
Move on.
Oh Lord. Moving on to the Omen remake. This one a little bit all over the place too. So Brian had this one pretty high. I believe he had the similar argument to this as he did with the Psycho remake from 2 years ago. So Brian, I'm going to cut to you. 13 for the Omen 2006.
Yeah, like you look at the Poltergeist remake and everything Sean said about they tried to do everything the original did, but they have to change it, and the changes kind of lessen what the original did. well, this is the exact same movie. You know, they've not changed stuff. It's the exact same movie. So by definition, it's a good movie. It's just that we've seen it before. Like, you know, the remake of Psycho isn't an inherently bad movie. It's just, well, I've seen this before. So I'd rather just watch the original. Yeah. And the same applies with this. You know, the Omen, I'd rather watch the original. But if the original got burnt in a fire and we never had any more copies of it, I'd be happy enough to have the remake because it's the same frigging movie. And actually, I do prefer Liev Schreiber over Gregory Peck. I've never been that fond of Gregory Peck. But it's just... you can't call it a bad movie when it's the same flipping movie. It's just... Yeah, I've got nothing more than that.
I get that. My whole thing, rewatchability plays a lot into how I rank and review movies. That's just a kind of personal thing. So same thing with Psycho remake. Like I watched that at the, I'm missing the actor's name. Damn, Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn, notwithstanding, I thought that there was actually things in that remake that improved on the original. A couple of casting decisions, stuff like that. Oh, yeah, of course. So this movie, I kind of agree with you with Liev Schreiber. I think that Julia Stiles is good in it. It's certainly shot very well. Like, it's very modern, creepy, got a little bit more atmosphere to certain scenes. So
the dogs are more threatening.
Yeah, it's a very watchable movie. I don't think the kids is creepy, but
I don't like
my
the kid.
issue, just like you said, where because the original exists, there's never really a huge reason to watch this one over the original. That's what makes me rank it pretty low, is because even though technically they did everything right, it almost feels like they plagiarized a movie, and that always just bugs me. I'm somebody that really champions remakes, so that's always hard for me to defend when a movie's just like, we'll just take what they did and do it again. And
it's just whether you like it or not. There is a certain generation of people who, no matter how much you tell them the original Omen's a great film, they're not going to watch it. When was it made? 70s? No.
Yeah, I tend to sympathize with people like that because there's times where I'm like, if there's a newer version. Yeah, I mean, it's the way films have been paced over the course of time. They're just tighter now. So I mean, I can relate to that. And Omen 06 is a little bit tighter, but shame on the marketing department at Fox. You knew 666 was coming up. You really could have done something special with. I mean, the movie marketed itself, and you just do the same thing.
Here's the thing, right? So, Let Me In, okay?
No,
is Let Me In is very much the same film as Let the Right One In. Okay, there are very few differences. But so many people say Let Me In is an absolute awesome horror film.
English.
And they've never seen Let the Right One In. And it's just like, to me, I can say the same thing. I give Let Me In a 4-star rating, right? But you know what? I'm never going to watch it again. Because as far as I'm concerned, Let the Right One In is one of the best horror movies ever made. And Let Me In is essentially just the same film.
Dude.
So objectively, I can't call it a bad movie. It's not a bad movie.
Movies aren't good unless they talk American in them. I'm sorry.
That's true. High five. I agree. Where are you at?
But you see what I'm saying? It's just in the same way with Psycho and The Omen, Let Me In, they're not bad movies. They're just they've already been done, and you're either a stickler for the original, or you just don't want subtitles. And given that the remake of Omen and Psycho are both still American, you're just like, yeah, well, I don't need the remake because I got the original. Well, if the original wasn't in English, if the original wasn't in English, you'd be like, yeah, the remake's better, man. Remake's better.
Yeah, old boy. The girl with the dragon's tattoo. Dude, America said no. We're all set with this, and that's.
I didn't. I want more.
Yeah, we're not getting it. We got the fourth one, which didn't have a complete book, so I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, but in all fairness, the original Swedish version, was it Swedish? Yeah, the original Swedish version. Face. Yeah, it didn't exactly set the box office alight. Across the pond.
They're good movies, and
this one didn't make as much money, so it's better.
It's true.
There's a lot of America's a little uptight with sex stuff, and there's a lot of
sex stuff or rape stuff. It's not sex.
Potato.
Depends on who you ask, brother.
Well, between porn, boners, and rape being said within 8 minutes, this video is not getting monetized. So on that note, we'll move on to The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, which is very weird that I have that higher than everybody else because I'm not overly fond of that one. Oh no, Sean's got a little bit higher than me. Okay, good. I feel better. So this one, I think we can all agree, whether or not we have it higher or lower, we kind of all say the same thing as far as the flaws. This has a giant James Wan hole in the middle of the movie to where it feels, I mean, all of these Conjuring movies to me feel like somebody trying to be James Wan. All of them, even the best ones. Like Annabelle Creation is certainly the most successful at trying to recreate that approach, but all these other ones just kind of feel like somebody watched The Conjuring and Insidious and said, we'll do a version of that. And that's how this movie felt to me. You get the characters back. The actors are still great in the roles. I like the whole twist about the ultimate villain being human this time and not like a malevolent presence. That was a cool little twist. But other than that, this kind of feels like the most generic version of The Conjuring that we could possibly get, especially compared to the first two. So I watched it, kind of immediately was like, whatever. So, Sean, how did you feel about The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It? Extremely long title.
I mean, I thought making it there kind of be like the trial that they're investigating, human bad actors in the mix. I thought that was a nice way to bring the Warren back in and do something a little bit different with it. But so that was kind of my take. I was kind of surprised when a bunch of people didn't like it. Like when I see where Bryan has it, I go, I honestly don't kind of understand that. So I just thought it was. I miss James Wan. It would be better if he directed it, but I thought the idea that they went with absolutely worked for me. So, Bryan, over to you. Explain to me what didn't work about it.
If they stuck with the court case stuff, a la Exorcism of Emily Rose, I would be right with you, John. But that final act, where it's all Hollywood kind of...
Hollywood's great, right.
Demons, we got to have the... It's just, it totally loses it big time for me. I'd have much preferred the movie to be a court case in which they're essentially putting spiritual stuff on trial. But they don't. They just that kind of gets sidelined so that the Warrens can go on another. Let's see some demonic force coming after them and get overblown special effects and it just. And any kind of believability or reality-based stuff. Let's not forget, each one of these movies starts with the preface that this is based on actual events.
Yeah,
well, it's like,
absolutely.
Sorry, but by the time you get to those end sequences, I ain't based on jack. Yeah, no chance.
Read up on the Warrens.
These are real people. These are real people with real lives who've again, the people that they've interacted with, the stories that these are based on, they are also people with real lives. And it's just like, I think it does a disservice, really, to just suddenly Hollywoodize it to within an inch of its life.
It's that Amityville type shit.
I've got my letterboxd list for all the 2021 releases. This currently sits at the bottom. Yes, below the Paw Patrol movie. That's how bad.
Why did you watch?
Did you see Cosmic Sin, Thunder Force?
Have you seen any?
You're
of
missing
the
out on some good stuff.
Bruce Willis movies that came out this year.
Old.
I've avoided that one. I couldn't bring myself to do it, to be honest.
Well, that's cheating if you haven't watched any of the great horrible movies of the year.
I had to watch this one for this stupid 31 on 31. I wouldn't have watched this one either if it weren't for this thing. Yeah.
Couple super chats. We got Nate saying sneak peek of 31 on 31 next
There
year.
will be 31.
It'll be on October 31st. That's all you're getting at me. No,
You've already had one. If anyone who's actually paying attention to Cody's video, go back and look at it.
Ooh.
There you go.
Ooh.
CBMF. It ain't plagiarism if you include Ray Donovan. This is true. This is true. Sucky opinions. The Conjuring 3 was boring. The time period I didn't feel. The romance angle wasn't forced on nearly enough. And the Exorcism of Emily Rose shows this up my opinion. Sounds like Bryan agrees.
Yeah.
I have a habit with movies where I kind of fall in love with an idea where I think they're going to do something, and when Patrick Wilson
Doesn't happen.
Patrick Wilson has his little event, and I'm like, oh, we got some serious stakes here, and it just takes some pills and he's fine.
Exorcism of Emily Rose is a seriously underrated movie. It keeps very grounded. Yeah, it's got some of the typical kind of Hollywood spiritual stuff in there, but they keep it fairly low key, and it's mostly rooted in the court case. It's a really great film.
That Deborah Morgan's really limber too.
Yeah, flexible. Annabelle Comes Home. Now, this was one that I saw in theaters as well, and to me, this was where it started to become very clear that these Conjuring spin-off movies were just kind of banking off the name, really. This is one that it's a haunted house movie. You could almost say this for all of these movies at this point. You have people stuck in a room, something happens, and then these different spirits come out. This one, you have a bunch of stupid kids in a house. One of them's a moron and lets Annabelle out for a moment, and then all of a sudden you get these new creatures that come that are probably going to get their own spin-off at some point. You've got the little boatman, the ferryman with the coins on the eyes. There's a werewolf for a moment.
The samurai dude.
Yeah, if you just like haunted house movies with stuff jumping out at you and nobody turning on a damn light for 90 minutes, this is a movie.
I do. That's the not turning on a light is very important to me.
Yes, exactly. It's okay. It's a decent movie, but to me, after Annabelle Creation, I was really excited for this because I thought that one was really good, and this one kind of fell back down into mediocre Conjuring stuff. Let me see where the hell did I just have it?
I'm the odd one out.
You are the odd one out, Sean.
Yeah. So to be clear, I just really like the Warrens as a family, and in real life, the real life people seem like great individuals that are trustworthy and not sleazy at all. I just find them to be such interesting characters that do something so fascinating while having such a normal life, and they pull off that balance really well, which goes into why did I like the last one so much and kind of like this one as well. And I think the reason this one kind of stands out to me in the Conjuring movies is it's the most lighthearted, that it's a little bit more accessible to someone that's can't get into as intense as the main films and actual exorcisms. So doing a haunted house movie with teenagers, there's a little, Bob's got balls. It's a little bit more of a sense of humor in it, and that to me is why it would.
What? Is that some American thing that's lost on me?
No,
that's the movie.
His name is Bob, and they made this running joke throughout the movie that Bob's got balls.
It's been. I saw it when it came out, but I've not seen it since. So yeah.
And then also because I'm seeing Ghostbusters again tonight, it's got McKenna Grace in it, who's really good as a child actress, and so. But that's not a spoiler. She's the star of the movie. Sean! Damn it! Spoilers! Spoilers!
Do not put her in the thumbnail because that is bad news.
I didn't know she was in the movie, even though she's the star of the movie.
I would have liked to have experienced her in the theater.
Sorry,
Lord.
Sean.
You gotta love it.
I distracted you there. I apologize.
Yeah. I think that was the end. I was just saying she's a good child actress, and so it's just that's it. Kind of me. I like the Warrens. I like that it's kind of a little bit more lighthearted, but fits in the universe, and then as a good cast, even with the young actors.
Sharkman 42. We're talking about 31 films today. You got to come back for there's a couple of movies you've talked about already that just aren't a part of the list, and
we're staying on topic with this one, guys. We went 4 hours last year. We're not doing that again.
And we've got tickets for Ghostbusters tonight, and we can't miss our showings.
By we, he means he.
And Cody.
Annabelle Comes Home, by the way, not a single scare in it. Like, there wasn't a single moment in that film where I even felt dread. I was just flat experience all the way through.
I felt dread for different reasons.
Poltergeist II, The Other Side. So me and Sean were correct, and CP had it a little bit higher. Bryan was a lot lower. So this one was a first-time watch for me. I had seen the original. I had seen the remake. I had seen 3 way back in the day. This was the only Poltergeist movie I had never experienced before. And I think it's because I never hear anybody talk about it. I've never heard a single person say, oh, Poltergeist 2 or Kane or anything. This just feels like this weird lost sequel. And I understand why, because beside the fact that I think that Kane is genuinely creepy and is a really cool antagonist to have for a sequel, everything else about this movie just kind of feels like a bit of a lifeless retread of the first movie, to where they're back, the spirits are doing their thing again. There are a couple of good practical effects here and there. It's nice seeing the actual family back together again if you're going to do a sequel to Poltergeist, but at the end of the movie, I was just like, I mean, Kane was cool, but I forgot everything else that happened, because it's just, let's do this stuff again without any of the magic. Sean, this was a first-time watch for you, along with all the Poltergeist movies. So how'd you feel about 2?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Of like, it's kind of nice to see a little bit more with the family. It has the tone and vibe of the first film. The old man is creepy, but it just, the situation just feels a lot more contrived. The buildup of the mythology I don't think worked all that well. And then when they actually go to the other side, it feels like one of those things that's like, you tried something you didn't have the technology to pull off here. But they're like floating around, like reaching out. It's just, it looks bad in the year 2021. So there's some, it's, it's more, not nearly as good.
Absolutely. CP, I know you were really high on your rewatch of Poltergeist, and then watched this one and kind of sunk into your chair. So give us some context.
Well, you know what? I like grandmas who can call toy phones. And this movie has that. So
It's true.
also, this entire list, this 31, just is completely divorced of what we're talking about, has 3 actors from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You have what's her tits in Exorcist II. You have Chief here in Poltergeist II, and of course you have Brad Dourif in Exorcist III. And
Fun
that's
fact.
how I feel about Poltergeist II.
Brian, you had it the lowest. Poltergeist 2, the other side.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me. Like, everything that the father went through in the first film, and the choices he made and the things he overcame, and then he takes 2 steps back in this film, and it's like, literally for the sake of having a character arc. It's like, we're bringing these guys back. What can we do with them? Well, okay. Well, let's just weaken the father character. Despite the first film, let's just weaken the father character so it gives him a character arc. Boom, go. And then you've got the lore itself being changed, because like we were told it was an Indian burial ground in the first film. It turns out that's not the case. It's some weird ass preacher who
It's a
went
really
off
deep cave too, by the way.
yeah, and it's just like everything's just. It is one of those movies where the studio's gone, made money, we need a sequel, go.
Well, it's like, to that, everything you just said, the first movie ends, and it's not like there's a bunch of dangling plot threads to build off of.
Yeah.
In which case, as soon as you do anything, it just feels contrived, like we're trying to force something that's not there.
Yeah. Then I think what you need to do is get away from that family. You've got the weird little lady with a squeaky voice. You call it Poltergeist 2. You have a different situation, different family, different whatever, and they're experiencing another poltergeist. You know this woman deals with poltergeists, so make her the old bird from the Insidious movies. You go that route. Elise. So she's essentially the Elise. So she goes off, she deals with another poltergeist story. You want another film, she goes off, she deals with another. Instead of trying to stick with this same family and then weakening them as a unit because you're really stretching to find a story for it.
I think not making an excuse is that part of the monkey wrench in that was the fact that the other sister actually died in real life. So they
Yeah, I had everybody and their mother correct me on that one for my 31, because I made a joke about how the movie didn't give a fuck about her, and they're like, actually, she was violently murdered, so you're an asshole. And I'm like, well, obviously I didn't know that, so sorry. Damien,
brutal murder is hilarious.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, that's a whole other level. Damien, Omen II. So we were all over the place on this one, and I'm letting CP lead this. Because you actually put this over the original Omen.
Yeah, I
So
did.
CP,
I
Damien
did.
Omen 2, the best of the Omen movies, number 7 on your list.
Yeah,
Wait, did you just say that he put this over the original Omen?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I saw 2006 before I saw the original. So that kind of whatever. But what I liked about this, the story, like there's a bunch of metaphors for the Damien character that mimic puberty. It's a bit of an inverse on the Jesus Christ story because he gets told halfway through the movie that he's got this great big boulder on his shoulders that he has to.
That's not where I thought you were going with that sentence. But
yeah, I was trying to figure out what I was gonna.
Great big.
What's big? And granted, I will give you. He gets over it real quick when he has that little moment out at the pier where yeah.
Because okay.
All right. Oh, cool. I just felt like it as somebody who's not religious, I liked the fact that what I know of Jesus Christ, it felt like it was a nice parallel because it's the kid who's the Antichrist who's coming into his own. Was he acting good? No, but I
The
felt
kid was pretty good.
yeah, at times he. I hate kid actors, but at times he was okay.
All of them, just all the kid
Including
actors.
myself too. by the
Holy
way.
Culkin, suck it. Yeah, this was a first time watch for me, along with all of the Omen sequels. And I hold the first one in very high regard, so I was curious what this was going to be. And once I got kind of over expecting this to be on the level of the first one or wanting it to be, it's a pretty good little slasher flick. I mean, it's kind of weird to take it in more of a slasher direction, but they focus more on the kills, the accident setups here. It's almost like a prototype for what Final Destination eventually became. And I thought the kid was pretty good. I thought that the big missed opportunity of this movie was what you just talked about, where he finds out that he is the Antichrist, and his first reaction is he's upset about it. He's like, "Why? Why me? Like, I don't want this."
But that's what
that's
Jesus
it.
Christ was like. Jesus Christ did. I mean, Bryan, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he
here we
a
go.
bit overtaken by all this news that he's got to deal for the entire human race?
Well, yeah, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he has his moment. Well, people say it's a moment of doubt. It's not so much doubt as just really dealing with the fact that he's got to accept pain.
Yeah.
That he doesn't have to take on
And then he screams, "Why?"
his.
And then everything's fine.
Yeah. Wait, no.
But anyway, yeah. To
Sorry.
me, that was the big. If they would have just explored that a little bit more, if we could have had throughout like the last half of this movie where he's kind of on the fence and then something happens that pushes him over the edge into evil, I think that this would actually go a lot higher for me. But story-wise, the movie didn't feel like it really had anything. It was just kills, which is fine. It's entertaining, but I need a little bit more in the story. But overall, I did like the movie.
That's also a plus for me. Just a lot of gore. I was like, all
Friday
right,
the 13th
all right,
guy.
yep.
I think for me, part of what felt was missing is that with the original, the central concept of what if you learned that the child you've been raising is the Antichrist, that central concept is horrifying in of itself without needing people to be killed.
Oh yeah.
And then adding to that, there's the mystery. Is it true? That question of what would you do if you discovered that information? And I think there's something uniquely horrifying about all of that, to where when you get to the second one, there is room to continue the story. Unlike with Poltergeist, this one, the kid's there. Okay, what happens next? Okay, that's a little bit interesting. More of these Final Destination. He kills. Cool. But when we already know he's the Antichrist. There's not that intrigue is gone.
I feel like the best direction to go with something like this is to make it in such a way that you almost root for him. So like you see what he's doing on screen, a bit like with the TV show Bates Motel. You know, Norman is he's been taken over by this psychosis, this psychology, and everything that he does, we know he's predestined because we've seen Psycho and the series as a prequel. So he can't escape that, and we know as the audience that he can't escape that. It is his destiny, and yet we feel sorry for him. We root for him because everything he does to try and fight that destiny, it doesn't matter. He's going to end up there, and I feel like that would be the best approach to take with something like this. Is look, you are the devil's child. You've got a destiny. It ain't one that maybe you want or like or want to accept, but tough. That is what it is. So I think when you do that, it creates a bit more room for drama in there.
So what I'm hearing is your big disappointment is you didn't get to root enough for the Antichrist.
Boom.
Boom. There we got it. I understand perfectly.
Annabelle Creation comes in at 11, and we were all really close with this one. 9, 10, 12, 13, and then it landed at the one that's missing, which is 11. Annabelle Creation was a movie that I think most people walked into with little to no expectation because it seems that most people did not like Annabelle at all.
Well, it came off the back of one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So this was directed by David F. Sandberg, who eventually went on to do Shazam. I think he might have done Lights Out as well. Very good director. Definitely the best of the Conjuring directors that aren't named James Wan. And potentially in his career, he could be better than James Wan. We'll see. But I like him very much. Annabelle Creation goes the prequel route, shows the creation of the doll, shows the origins of what happened, how did the evil get inside of it. And I really enjoy this one. To me, outside of the first two Conjurings, this is easily the best of the Conjuring movies. I think it's a genuinely good, haunting kind of movie. I like the performances of pretty much everybody involved. I like the story direction that it takes. And I love how it wraps itself up and then dovetails immediately into the beginning of Annabelle and retroactively makes Annabelle a better movie for me personally.
I love
So I was a big fan of this one. Bryan, as somebody that enjoyed Annabelle more than most, how did you like Annabelle Creation?
For me, it was a roller coaster ride.
No, it was a movie. It was a movie, Bryan.
It was just everything in it, every decision that is made in it is there to how do we get the scare? How do we get the scare in this situation? Because like characters in it do things that I would never do. Like you're a kid, you've gone into a room, you've seen some of the creepy ass stuff that would freak anyone out. You're not going in that room ever again. I don't care what you say. You are never going in that room again. And yet, what do? They go back in that room. They're just too damn curious. But it's just like so stuff like that really irks me. Characters doing things like that they never do. But beyond that,
the kids.
Beyond that, the scares really work. All the way through it, I feel dread. I feel on the edge of my seat. My palms are sweaty. I'm just like, this is a scary film, and it keeps that momentum all the way through. So yeah, from a directorial standpoint, Sandberg is on point when it comes to getting out of it what he needs to get out of it.
I'm kind of with you there with that because I think I brought it up in my review that like they're in the room of no things and like you know that they're fucking around with the coins and shit. It's like the thought came across my head like, yeah, take one of those things and just fuck things up at your home and there was so much potential where it's like, yeah, be a stupid kid and take one of the things out of the room and but that didn't happen. But it still was quite enjoyable.
Sean.
Yeah, I mean, after Annabelle, I just thought this was a big improvement that fleshed out the mythology, the history in a way that I was captivated by. Mm-hmm. And I thought it had also like really great use of sound because you're in this creaky old house. Mm-hmm. And so it just uses that atmosphere really nicely. And there's just a lot of images that stick with you, like the dad holding the cross and his fingers bending backwards and you just hear the snap. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that stuff is what stuck out to me, but just a great comeback after a very lackluster first Annabelle. Whether that's 1 star or 3 stars, very lackluster in my opinion. This is a nice comeback. This was the Annabelle movie that I wanted.
Worst film ever.
And I believe I have this one spot below Annabelle Comes Home. I just think Annabelle Comes Home is more rewatchable for me because it is kind of lighter, easier to watch. But
So if Annabelle's the worst film ever, was this the best film ever?
I mean, obviously.
Yeah, hello. Just, I find it quite amusing as well that this is a prequel to a prequel. It's like they just keep going back with these things. It's,
Dude, they're
I thought it was
marveling.
funny that Annabelle got 3 movies before The Conjuring got 3 movies. It was like, whose franchise is this? Insidious Chapter 3. Sean and CP agreed incorrectly, and then me and Bryan had it a lot higher. I think me and Bryan are the only two that had it higher than the original. Now, this was a movie that you got to think back. This was when Lee Winnell was not the Lee Winnell that he is now. This was his first directing job. And since then, he was just the guy that his reputation was the guy that helped James Wan in the writing department and probably with a lot of concept ideas.
And acting.
Yeah, and he acted in Saw, which is one of the weaker parts of that movie. So
he
I
wrote
had
Saw. He wrote Saw. Yeah.
correct. So I had really low expectations for this. Insidious Chapter 2 was a bit of a downgrade from the first one for me anyway, but this one I was like, ooh, I don't know. I don't know if Lee can direct or not. You say that now, it's laughable. But this to me was the best of the Insidious movies. It didn't rely on all of that audio booms and every single scare. It builds tension better. I thought that the central storyline regarding this girl who becomes bedridden really raised the tension of the situation to where she cannot leave, and the spirit is slowly trying to gain whatever he's trying to gain through her. They brought Elise back. Obviously this is a prequel before the first film, so I like the origin that we get for her, where she's kind of conflicted. I didn't even mind the 2 characters, one of which played by Lee, who are kind of a weak comedic relief in all these movies. I think they're used the best in this one.
They're toned down a bit.
Yeah, they're toned down a bit. So I really was surprised when I first saw this, and over time it has become my favorite of the Insidious movies. So to stay with the theme, Bryan, obviously you agree. So why is this one better than the other Insidious movies?
It's just so much better directed. Like I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think 1L is a better director than 1. I think he goes for control with the camera. He's more confident in the sense that he knows when to just say, I'm not going to put bells and whistles on it. I'm going to be still. I'm going to be wide. I'm going to let the scene be creepy. And he's more of the Stanley Kubrick kind of school of filmmaking. I think there's a few nods to Kubrick throughout this film as well. There's the stuff in the corridor when he's doing the tracking shot, and you look at the carpet, it's all hexagonal design. It's a very definite Kubrick nod there. But he shoots this very much in the way of a Kubrick film. A lot of wides, a lot of wides. And I think when a camera is still, it's not jumping around all over the place,
Preach.
and let you're still scared. That's a real skill. That's a director who actually knows what they're doing. And I'm
That
not saying
sequence
one
where the demon is closing the curtains,
big
shutting the
time.
door,
Dread.
closing
Such dread in that
yeah.
scene, and it's just like, and it's all on a wide, and you just like, and you can't escape. You feel like you're right in close, and you're not. It's all on a wide. And it's just that's skill as a director. Now I'm not saying Wan isn't a skilled director. I think he is. But he's very much more of the let's throw everything in there. Let's move the camera around, spin it over,
Big on
do
style.
jump zooms, do that, and it's just like it's style over substance to me. And it's like people often say, like you alluded to it before, that Wan gave 1L the peg up on his career, and it's like I think it's the other way around, to be honest. Wan built his career on screenplays written by 1L, and then when 1L
which
started,
he's written like 20.
and then 1L, when he finally directed one of those screenplays, did a better job with it in the director's chair, as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of the toning down of those 2 comedic relief characters could very well be a result of that. is the fact that he wrote it, he understands the way they should operate, he directed it, so he did so accordingly. As a writer and an actor, you've got to hand that project over to a director like Juan, and you've got to take his direction. Ultimately, you're handing that over to him so that he can make his film. And I think it's Juan's choice to amp up that humour, to have the very definite shift in tone, which is what for me ruined Insidious 2. But for me, Insidious 3 is easily the best of the bunch.
CP or Sean, any difference of opinion there?
I understand that we're in a world where Jordan Peele and his extraordinary long career of directing and Ari Aster, they get these huge credits for all the films they've made. So I can kind of understand you guys talking about Leigh Whannell, but the guy's made 3 movies as a director, and I think he's slated to do the Escape from New York remake or reboot.
Oh, I don't know, but I hope so, because that sounds awesome.
He was supposed to be doing Wolfman, but he's not doing it anymore, is he? Which is
So,
I've slated him to direct a Terminator remake in 2024, but that's just me. I don't have any control, so I can't make that happen.
I would be up for that.
We're going to release it at the same time as Avatar 17.
I mean, I certainly enjoyed Upgrade quite a bit. Invisible Man, I felt like was serviceable.
Fantastic.
Serviceable.
Was. It was fantastic.
Worst movie ever is what I'm hearing you say, CP.
No nudity, no kills, serviceable.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's done in post and like with effects and stuff. Like it's just a wide shot. I mean, you're right, Brian. Wide shot. She's hanging around. Wait, I'm talking about Invisible Man. Insidious 3, I think, is his least good of his movies, and
I would agree, but he gets better every time so far. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if that trend continues.
I'm just saying I'm not ready to crown him, but Jordan Peele is the best thing ever.
I just think a lot of the problem as well is when you're directing Insidious 3 and you're coming off the back of 2 movies that James Wan made, despite the fact they were both written by Whannell and even.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he's attached to the series.
Exactly. Right? So he created this series essentially, and I just feel like people go, "Oh no, you're taking over from Wan. It's just you're no Wan. Don't even try to be." It's like, well, actually, look what he did.
That's actually what I was about to say. You just quoted what I was about to say.
Tone.
Yeah, that's what I said.
It's just like, and I think people are too quick to jump on. It's like if somebody said, say they're going to do a sequel to a Nolan movie, you'd be like, no. Well, I mean, they did it with Dr. Sleep, didn't they? You don't make a sequel to a Kubrick movie. You just simply don't. Like, people already wrote that off before they saw it.
As they should.
Exactly. But it's like, and I just think people get in that mentality. And it just actually look what Whannell's doing with the camera, with the actors, with all of the tools at his disposal with Insidious 3.
Is that a match or a toothpick?
It is a match. I almost lit the match, and then I went, I probably shouldn't light a match. So I started chewing on it, which I also probably shouldn't do. So I'm going to do it again.
We're going to lose Sean this time.
All right, well, moving on to number 9, we've got the original Insidious that just narrowly beat out 3. Sean and CP agreed, me and Brian agreed. This was a movie that when it first came out, I loved it. I thought that it was awesome. I remember taking my little brother to the theater to see it, and I remember warning him beforehand. He was like maybe 6, 7 years old. I was like, pee before the movie because we're not leaving. And he didn't listen, and so 20 minutes in, he's like, I go to the bathroom, and I was like, you're holding it! So all I remember every time I watch this movie is the last 45 minutes of the movie, my brother going like this. We were the only ones in the theater, but I thought that it was... for the time, especially before the Conjuring and everything came along, this kind of felt like him getting out some of his stylistic ideas as a director for the Conjuring, almost like his rough draft for that. I liked the way that they changed the haunting of houses with the astral projection thing. That's a really cool concept. I think that all of the monsters that we get here, the apparitions we get, like the Bride in Black and the Darth Maul, are all pretty iconic. I like all the characters and the performances here. But no, somebody's not at the front door. Shut up. So anyway, I felt like take over for me real quick, CP. Sorry, 'cause they're ringing again.
Yeah, listen. Anytime you put Darth Maul in a movie, I'm on.
That's true.
I'm totally in. And a bride of Darth Maul? Shit, they didn't write that in Star Wars. So I'm downtown Julie Brown for Patrick Wilson, Darth Maul, Lady Darth Maul. Give me more.
So you guys never asked
Sean?
my opinion on the third one. I have it lower on my list because I don't have anything to say about it. I don't. It's like, okay, yeah, no real complaints. It was worked well enough, but for me it was one of the ones that I was like, I guess right here in the middle. I guess here.
Dude, that's the entire franchise for me. I'm like, I kind of forgot already, and I just watched them.
Right. Yeah. And like I remember the fourth one because my fun experience watching it.
Titties.
But now that we're to the first one, I thought it had a interesting idea that takes the haunted house genre that's kind of familiar. It just had a different spin on it. I think kind of having the dad kind of like have a superpower that he forgot about and having to go rescue his son gives it a little bit of a compelling arc to it or journey to it. That I like that sort of thing. That the characters are kind of a little bit bland, especially when you see him do Conjuring with the same lead actor, and it's a much more interesting character just a few years later. But a nice prototype for the Conjuring, kind of is the way that I saw it.
Yeah, it's funny how much people sleep on Rose Byrne too.
Are you saying that a film that Lee Whannell wrote and kind of allowed James Wan to kind of prop himself up on is what led him to do The Conjuring? Maybe something, I don't know. Just saying. Whose career built who? I just
Are you trying to say that Insidious is better than The Conjuring?
No, I'm trying to say that Wan owes more of his success to Whannell than Whannell does to Wan.
Yeah.
So, but
Whannell's great. I think you're diminishing the success of someone that's directed a lot of movies over almost 20 years now.
Yeah, he's diverse too.
Whannell did not write Furious 7. And that movie made over $1 billion. Whannell did not write Aquaman, and that movie made over $1 billion. So
it was Whannell's idea to have the drum.
James Wan is on fire. And without Whannell.
is that out?
Before UPS rudely interrupted me.
Fuckers.
At the time, I loved Insidious. I still very much like this movie. On rewatch, it dropped a little bit for me because it does this thing, and I made a joke of it all throughout my 31 on 31 video, to where every jump scare has this boom, this loud boom. And this
How was his stitches on that bit, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was something that when I watched this movie again, I was like, I don't remember that being so aggravating. And maybe it's because he's done movies like The Conjuring now without that it stands out more. But that gave me like a bit of a headache watching all of these movies, especially Insidious Chapter 2, which where did Insidious Chapter 2 go? Did we skip
I've been
over
wondering
that?
the same thing.
15.
Oh, damn, did I click over it by accident? Oh, man, where are we at? What did I do? I screwed up, guys. Man, we're going to go back really quick. I'm sorry. Blair Witch Project.
Holy
number
cow.
16.
Yeah, wait.
I was wondering how we got so far forward. I was like, when did we get to number 12?
I was looking at the time. That's my fault. I was looking at the time, and I think my hand was rushing. So the Blair Witch Project. Sean had this at 8. I had this at 26. CP and Bryan. CP a little bit higher. Bryan was closer to the top. So really quickly, for me, this movie is one of those horror classics that I can honestly say that I've always hated. It's just not a movie for me. I appreciate what it did. I understand the legacy of it, the viral marketing before viral marketing was even a thing. It was revolutionary for all of that. As a movie, when you watch it not the day that it released and think that it was possibly a real story, I can't get through it. It gives me a headache. I just don't get anything out of it. I'm not a found footage person. I don't care for any
Yeah,
of the characters.
found footage.
It's already given me found footage. I'm not a found footage person. Didn't care for any of the characters. The ending scene, everybody says it's like the scariest thing ever. I've never thought it was that scary of an ending. So I'll swap over now to Sean, who had it the highest. So Blair Witch Project, I know you had a different perspective.
No more fire.
You and Bryan, I believe. Well, all three of you guys were there when this was the thing.
Yeah, that's the
All
thing.
right,
That's
like
the
you were a
thing,
fucking
Cody. It's because you're a child that compared to us that you don't appreciate this movie enough.
You weren't there, man.
Yeah, like we didn't know back in the day. The internet was brand new. We didn't understand reality from falsehoods, and so we went in. I thought this is basically a documentary about these people dying in the woods, and it freaked me out to go into the. I don't know. I don't really like found footage movies. This is one of the few that I think kind of did it right because it actually commits to the concept. That it actually says there's only 2 cameras, and so either you're looking at the VHS or you're looking at the 16 millimeter, and they look different. The lead character isn't on screen much because she's the one running the camera, and so that it makes you able to actually buy into the fact that you're watching found footage. The gimmick works because they actually do it, as opposed to even the second Blair Witch. They have 17 cameras, drone footage. There's a close-up of everybody's face, and it just kind of makes you feel like you're watching a cheap movie rather than actual found footage.
Are you trying to say that you don't have 15 Bluetooth ear cameras? Because
I mean, I do because I'm a narcissist that lives to get praise from the internet and likes, but most people don't. But yeah, it's that. That's why. And it's not one that I rewatch. It's like I hadn't watched it.
House caving in, Bryan?
I don't like what Bryan's saying.
Could be a haunted house situation here in light of what we're
Absolutely. So
trying to listen to what's happening in his house real quick.
Yeah.
CP.
I moved my head closer to my microphone, as if I moved closer to my microphone, I'd be able to hear.
That's what Blair Witch does to us. Really quick, CP. I know you worked at a theater when this was the shit.
Yeah,
so.
you know what? Just to cut to the chase, I have a video, July 1999, where I talk at length about my experience with Blair Witch. It's for me, it's much more the essence of what was going on at that time. So check out that video. Shameless plug.
Bryan, very quickly, thoughts on the first Blair Witch Project, because we got 2 that we got to get to, and then right back to where we were.
Yeah, it's just I just think you had to be there, really. It's
and I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
No, I say that every time I talk about this movie. I did not watch it in theaters when everybody thought this was real. I wish I did.
You came to this off the back of having seen goodness knows how many
found footage.
That had just like driven the whole concept into the ground.
That have made Jason Blum rich. Yikes.
But you go into this in 1999. The term found footage found footage hadn't even been invented yet. You know, it's just it was just this documentary, and it's like holy crap. That's really
actually Cannibal Holocaust did the found footage thing.
but it
Don't
wasn't.
get him going. I said quickly.
I know.
It didn't exist as a genre. It didn't exist as a you didn't hear people saying, "Oh, it's a found footage movie."
You see, my tongue was moving. My brain said, "You're an asshole.
It's because you're an idiot. It's because you're an asshole and an idiot." Let's move on. We know this already.
Indisputable.
There we go. Insidious Chapter 2. I didn't have this one the lowest. So me and Sean agreed. CP had it a little bit higher. Bryan had it lower. For me, this took everything that began to annoy me on my rewatch of Insidious and amplified it 1,000 times with the boom and the jump scares and everything. I don't really, even aside from that, when I first saw this and that didn't bug me, I didn't really care for the story here. I thought that the whole bride in black apparition was very creepy. The fact that they gave it a backstory, made it a man in a dress and all of that, it kind of explained away the creepiness. And it's an okay haunted house experience, but especially after you've seen the first movie, after you've seen The Conjuring, this to me is James Wan's worst film. So, Sean, Insidious Chapter 2.
Not that ventriloquist movie?
No, I will take Dead Silence over this.
No, Dead Silence is crap.
I haven't seen that.
you're not missing anything. Is that
Miss
one
Donnie
also
Wahlberg shaving the whole movie.
Yeah, I felt like they wrote themselves into a bit of a corner, and with where they ended with the last one, and then they try and treat it like a mystery, like what's going on with Patrick Wilson. But
They told us.
we all saw the first movie, and so we know what's going on here. It's like there's no mystery to it. So it's like you're just waiting for him to go full Jack Torrance in the movie. And it's like, okay, I like some of these characters, I like some of the sequences, but there's just not much there to kind of elevate it or anything.
Brian,
Yep.
CP.
Yep. I double that. Forget
All
it.
right. Blair Witch, the third movie, came in at 14. Brian had it the highest. I had it the lowest. I like that movie. Sean 16, CP 17. So this one, well, I say I like this movie. I like this one better than the original. To me, this one, again, not a movie that I would rush to rewatch because I'm just not really a found footage guy. But when I saw this in theaters, it kind of felt like more of a remake, like a modern redo of the original film than a sequel. And I get a little bit more enjoyment out of it for that, because if I'm going to be forced to watch both of them and not be happy, I would rather watch the more modernized version. It's a little bit more intense. The effects with like the tent shooting up into the darkness, the sequence where she's crawling through the pipe or that little the really close corridor. It's the third act especially very intense. So I get a little bit more out of this one. Still not necessarily my cup of tea. But Sean, I know you like Blair Witch the original much more than I did. So what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I missed it when it first came out, which is interesting because I liked Blair Witch and I like Adam Wingard, and so it was actually very much on my radar. I just missed it until I watched it a couple months back. I thought it was a serviceable, essentially remake with enough reasons as to why it's a sequel. It does a good enough job at that. It updates the technology in ways that do make sense. Like, I think having so many cameras where everybody gets a close-up diminishes the effect, but some of that does make sense, that they would have drones, they would have GPS, and there are like body cams and stuff. So some of it does make sense in light of how much time had passed and technological advances. I think a few sequences are very effective, where the girl's crawling through the hole in the ground. I couldn't watch that. That's the most uncomfortable thing in any of these movies for me.
Which,
Totally
by the
agree.
way,
Totally agree.
you need to watch a movie called Crawl or Die, which came out before this, and it's the entire movie is that sequence where she's crawling and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
You're selling me on this. I'm going to watch that. Never watch that movie.
I'm going to never watch it.
But I mean, it adds a bigger budget, so you have more kind of spectacle stuff in it that maybe makes it a little bit easier to watch and a little bit paced a bit better because of that. But I think that also kind of diminishes the effect, because I feel like I'm watching a movie with a bunch of effects rather than creepy footage that was found.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I still believe that the original is real. I'm that stupid. Hey, who's that?
Are you going to come with us or no?
No, I'm on a live stream.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
No coming.
Anyway, so we'll move on to...
Whoa. Move on.
What?
I've not said anything about this film yet.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Too right.
Blair Witch. I was trying, for time's sake, I was going on. I wasn't skipping over you. Go ahead.
I mean, they can hear what you're saying.
Brian's the one who speaks the longest. Let's just skip
You're
it.
still not
Comment,
muted, Sean.
comment.
We still can hear you, Sean.
What? You can still hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
you were never muted.
No,
Nice-
I was.
nice
This
combo.
mic. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's flashing because it's muted.
No, I
mic-
ain't.
This trick mic's gonna get me in trouble.
Yeah.
I'm just doing a live stream
that's
with these
the
assholes.
government.
I can't go. I'm
They
sorry.
won't let me go. They just won't shut up. They just won't shut up.
We're supposed to be done in 2 hours, but Brian was talking about Blair Witch, so go on without me. Brian, Blair Witch.
There's two things that stop this being a 4-star movie for me. One is the technology is ridiculous. As you've already stated, they've got like 20 cameras on this thing, and they've got a drone that seems to have a battery life of like 3 days or whatever. I've got a drone. I can tell you the battery lasts half an hour, and my drone's pretty good. So yeah.
Not good enough.
Well,
Well, clearly.
in the movie's defense, they do have that weird how is time
The
moving
time thing, yeah.
I'm not fully
Yeah.
defending. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, it's just it's a bit off. It's a bit off. And also, I really wish they hadn't shown us the witch at
Yeah.
the end. It looks like an alien from an M. Night Shyamalan film, and I don't want to see it. It's so much scarier not seeing it. When she's against the wall and the dude gets taken, and she's like, does she look? Does she not look? She knows she's got to get out of there without looking. We shouldn't see this thing. It's so much scarier not seeing it. But that whole section, that last 20-25 minute section, that was one of the most tense I've been in a long time in a horror film, because I hate being out in the woods on my own. Being out in the woods on my own at night would be even worse. That would really set my anxiety off. And
Other
that
people.
house, that house is just it is a character. That is the scuzziest, most depraved looking building I've ever seen in my life, and I just would not want to be there. It just makes my skin crawl. So yeah, all the tunnel stuff with it, it's really tense anyway. So just for that last 20-25 minutes, I'm like, yeah,
I agree. It's my favorite Blair Witch movie, and it's sacrilege to some people. The one thing that I really wish that they could switch is that the locals don't reveal their little tricks so early. Like, that would have been neat if that was like a third act reveal, like where they were fucking around for some of the, like, so you're not sure, like, are they behind this or so, like, it was just so soon in the movie that they did the stick figure thing, and then they're like, they leave and then they come back a little bit.
I get what you're saying, but I think if they do that, then you end up with a 2-hour movie. And this ain't the kind of movie that I want to be 2 hours.
I guess.
Like the fact that it's like is it like 80 minutes or something? It's over pretty quick.
Yeah.
I like the pacing of it. It's just right. I
Yeah,
reckon.
just a little nitpick is all. I enjoyed it. Like you said, the last half an hour is way better than the original.
There you go. The Exorcist III came in at number 8. This is continuing back. My apologies, guys, for screwing that up. So I had it at 6. CP had it at 3, very high on it. Sean and Bryan not quite as high on it. Now, this is a movie that I had seen once before with my dad. And my dad, all I remember when we watched it was Brad Dourif was in it, and then that jump scare, which I will still kind of contend that might be the best jump scare of all time. It's certainly one of them. Just the way that they linger on that wide shot for so long that you get so comfortable that nothing's going to happen, and then boom, they just crash zoom on a decapitation that you don't get to see. I think that was brilliant. But for this movie, this is my favorite of the Exorcist movies. I like the exploration of what happened to Father Karras in a very disturbing way, to where he has now become a vessel for evil. And you get Brad Dourif, and of course, you guys know I'm a Chucky fanatic. I love Brad Dourif. I think this might be his best performance. Yeah, I know. News. This might be his best performance. Certainly one of them. He is so intense in his scenes to where he's describing what he's been doing to these people, and you never need to see it, and it's just totally effective. I like the way that the movie is very steadily creepy. The whole hospital setting always kind of sets me off. I've said that numerous times too. The whole journey that this officer is going through, to where he is investigating these murders that look like copycat killings, but the guy was executed like a decade ago. I just thought it was a really intense movie. It was really genuinely creepy. They could have done something better with the third act. That was really the only main thing I had with it, that the exorcism felt a little bit obligatory, but apparently the ending on the alternate version is not quite as exciting. So I don't know. There could have been a better third act, but I really liked this one. CPU had it even higher than me. So go ahead.
Like most of what you said, I like the fact that how dare they do this scene, this very long dialogue scene where they're in that cell or whatever, and it's just Brad Dourif describing things, and it's so anti-film to tell and not show, but you could see it in his face, like we were talking about last night. In his eyes, you can believe that dude's fucked up, and it was just a great sell. The again, the jump scare was huge. Maybe could trim some time in the beginning or at the end, but I really enjoy it. And again, my list is based on what would I most want to watch again. And Exorcist III, I'd really like to watch again.
I'm right there with
You
you.
guys want to watch me?
Yeah. Brian, Exorcist III. Was this a first time watch for you, Brian?
It was a first time watch for me. Yeah. I think I'm a huge X-Files fan, and there was an episode of the X-Files called Beyond the Sea with Brad Dourif. It's still my favourite episode of the X-Files of all time, and it's actually my favourite performance by Brad Dourif of all time. And I see now where they got it from, because it's essentially Exorcist III mixed with Silence of the Lambs. It's like, yeah, you take those two films, you get that episode of the X-Files, and it's like as good. It's just for TV. But yeah, I watched this and I was just like, this takes me right back to that episode of the X-Files, which just is better.
Now I can't help but think of Brad Dourif talking and
tucking his tail between his legs.
There you go.
Yeah.
I also know who Brad Dourif is, and my favorite Brad Dourif movie is Dune 1984, of course. Yeah, so this one, the thing I loved about this movie was the two guys' friendship at the beginning of the movie. That I wouldn't have expected that to be like the thing that really stood out. I was like, I just totally buy into the fact that these two guys have been friends for 20 years.
Yeah.
I thought that was just really good. I liked it more as kind of the procedural in the first half than the second half, which is almost to say that I didn't like it as much when all the Brad Dourif stuff started to kick in. That stuff wasn't as compelling to me. So, yeah, I like the first half more than the second. There's some great stuff in there. I just didn't kind of buy into some of the things that you guys loved.
Yeah, it's kind of like the antithesis of what we talk about with modern cinema. Like there's not a lot that happens. There's lots of like character stuff, lots of talking, lots of relationships and stuff like that. Where I don't know if somebody today who's like used to I don't know, whatever, Twilight would watch Exorcist III, and that's a bad comparison. But
I thought it was a great comparison. That's what I was thinking. Like, man, this is nothing like Twilight.
That is accurate.
Worst thing ever.
Team Carris. The Exorcist franchise as a whole, if there's one thing that it gets right that all these other movies don't, it's that they're dealing with the devil, and they allude to the biblical reference. So we're not looking at some other religion's devil. We're looking at Christianity's devil, and the only way they can defeat that is through the power of Christ. And that's one thing that all the other movies tend to skirt around. It's like, well, we want to use the mythology of Christianity, but we don't want to use the solution. And that's what kind of irks me a bit about a lot of these movies. It's like with the Conjuring stuff, they always go deep into the Christian mythology, but the thing that defeats the demonic force is always the love between husband and wife, or the love that a mother has for the son.
It's true.
It's like, and that stuff really irks me. So, yeah, that's what I like about this movie. The third act you have problems with, I actually really like, because it's these two guys coming together, and it's only through the power of the faith in Christ that actually defeats the devil. So that to me is where they get it right. So
there you go. We'll talk about number 7 and 6 together. So we got number 7 is The Conjuring 2, where CP was incorrect. And then we have...
Who dropped that far?
And then we have The Conjuring, which a little bit higher for us. Now, both of these movies, I think, have a lot of similar strengths. The only weakness really with 2 is that it went on a little bit too long, had a little bit too much going on in it. But other than that, I think they're both very solid, haunting movies, some of the best of the genre. The first one, showed that you can do jump scares without loud booms, so that was good. A lot of really good sequences here with the like just that in the first film is almost iconic and so creative. The second one, I love the nun character, and I really enjoyed the whole thing about the kid kind of being portrayed like she is faking it all because she's being told to fake it all to a certain degree. So that was very cool to kind of have some twists and reveals in the third act. But overall, both of them for me are very, very high praise. I love the characters of Ed and Lorraine Warren, how they're portrayed. And I hope that eventually we do get another Conjuring movie that's on the level of these, because if it continues to go down, the Conjuring universe is never as strong as it is in these two movies for me.
I felt like with The Conjuring, finally James Wan was able to break free from the shackles of Lee Winnell and his terrible scripts and terrible story making, and so we finally came into his own.
And made a whole universe.
Yes. I said this before, but I just love the two lead characters, and then with James Wan's direction, he's just great with the atmosphere, I think, in these movies and setting them in a time period. You feel like you're going to a time and a place. Love a lot, especially in the first movie, the practical effects with people getting actually ripped around on set, things like that. And so for this genre of movie, I think James Wan just did it right. And the second one, kind of like what Cody said, of they found the right way to continue things, to have all the stuff you want, but adding in that layer of what would be the public perception be. Whereas the Warrens have their own skepticism of each thing they investigate, but then you add in people that just think that they're total hucksters and con artists. And so I thought that was just the right way to kind of add a new flavor to it. So I dug
That's one
that.
of the reasons I preferred the second film is that element, actually. One, I liked that they set it in Britain, because you rarely see.
That was the big downside for me. It's like, Britain, really? Oh, goodness.
You very rarely see a Hollywood horror movie of this kind of sort set in rural Britain.
Because we don't know what "in it" means. That's why.
In it, bruv. Yeah. So I liked that, but I did. I liked that the character that's in it, who is the absolute skeptic. They don't make her out to be a complete arswipe or a numbnuts. She's actually a very logical person. A lot of the arguments she makes are justified. Whereas if you look at like Poltergeist III, they have this same character. But they don't give him any kind of logic or support to validate his opinions. It's just, no, he's the douchebag who's going to poo-poo everything because he's a douchebag. Yeah. So it's like with any kind of this kind of film, you're asked to be instantly on the side of the people who believe. That's the way they gear them. So I like that. No, they have the other voice in this, but they have it in a reasonable way, not in a I'm just going to poo-poo everything for the sake of it. And
along those same lines, one of the things I like about the Conjuring films is that they show the Warrens as skeptical themselves. Like whenever in the first movie, when the couple first show up, they kind of shoot them down. Some of the people they investigate, they're like, no, there's nothing here. They are skeptical themselves. They're not just believing in everything. Yeah. They also think, people make things up. People mess around with us. People are just wrong. And that layer adds a believability to everything taking place, where the skeptics aren't just the jerks and the morons. It's trying to have a balanced perspective with logical humans.
CP?
When the first Conjuring came out, I was kind of losing faith in the horror genre. I mean, that's not to say that there weren't good horror movies, but it felt like we were just getting like Paranormal Activity. Like
paranormal movies were like at one point in time was my least favorite subgenre of horror.
Yeah, so like mainstream horror, I was kind of like done, and then I watched. What did you say?
He said it still is.
But I bought The Conjuring when it came out on Blu-ray, and I had a really decent setup, home theater, and I was so absolutely pleased with how that movie was a complete experience, whether it be the sound, the tone, the picture. It was like, oh shit,
For me, it was more
classic.
effective at home
Yeah,
than the theater.
yeah. It was just, there is hope for horror. If they could capture this again, this is exactly what I like in horror, and it's in a subgenre that I'm not really a big fan of. And
There you go.
then the second one, like I told you before, I tend to fall in love with things, and I wanted the second one to be all about the Amityville thing, not the fucking 28 Days of the Lutz story, the DeFeo thing, where people actually got murdered at the Amityville house, and then they decided to go to Britain, where everybody say in it and bruv and chips, fucking French fries.
Kiss
Yeah.
my ass.
You're closer to
Cookies.
France.
Cookies. That's true.
The Exorcist, probably the most popular answer for number 1 from what I saw in the comment section. We have it at number 5.
Nobody has it at one.
Shining.
We all just destroyed everybody's experience. This is a movie that admittedly was a bit ruined for me by hype. I watched this when I was maybe 9 years old, 10 years old. For the longest time, I was told this was definitively the scariest thing ever. Not even like in the ballpark or this is top. No, this is it. Nothing comes close. And when I first watched it as a kid, didn't really hit it that way for me. I was like, okay, all right, I've seen it. You guys kind of oversold it. As an adult, I like this movie. I'm not saying that it's bad, but it still kind of falls victim to overhype for me. Like, it just, for me, it doesn't really reach the levels that people tend to put it on as greatest of all time, best of all time, scariest of all time. I appreciate what they did here for the time. It's pretty gnarly with all the effects, with what they do to this girl throughout. Even just the things they tell her to say in this movie is pretty pushing the boundaries. And I think that there's a good. What the hell are you doing?
Oh, sorry, I'm just being like Sean. I'm just writing my headset.
Oh, you were trying to silence me. I was like, you dick. You're not even talking on the next 3. Anyway.
It's kind of kill two birds with one stone kind of situation.
There you go.
And the guy who blew his nose into a mic for 2 hours straight a couple weeks ago.
I was ill.
There's a
had
new
COVID. I literally had COVID. Shut your mouth.
No.
Anyway.
I have a vaccine.
I didn't take the vaccine, so screw you.
To sum it all up,
Cody.
I appreciate this movie more than I actually enjoy it. I think that it's a
Yeah.
very good movie. I appreciate the legacy. I understand why at the time this was insane for people to see in theaters. This is one of those movies I understand, like the reports of people throwing up in the aisles or whatever. I get it with this one. For me personally, not in my favorites of all time. Bryan.
I see this
No,
first
go ahead.
and foremost as a character study, a drama. The horror is kind of secondary. It's just because, but you've got a couple of sequences that are essentially like the equivalent of the alien chestburster scene in Alien, where they're so full on that they're memorable and they kind of take over the whole film with regards to how people remember it. But actually, once you take away like 3 or 4 of those particular elements, you've got like an hour and 50 minutes of just pure drama, character-driven kind of drama. So, and that's it. I think your liking of it hinges on whether or not you're into that. And for me, I am gripped by that stuff, by this man who is really struggling with his faith, and has to find his way back. To me, that stuff supersedes all the the projectile vomiting and the crucifix going where the crucifix should never go and all that business. So,
Sean, The Exorcist.
Yes.
CP.
It's a classic. You kind of already mentioned it. I think that just how shocking it is still watching it, I think that's what really stands out, that it's been ripped off, copied a zillion times in the last 40 years or 50 years. You watch this movie, it is still shocking what this girl says and does.
Yeah.
That as much as people try and copy it, they're not willing to go where this movie goes.
I'll go.
And then, of course, it is a great character study and all that, all of the different pieces. It's a classic that for a reason.
CP, anything to add?
Yeah. I first saw it as a kid who was used to watching slashers and shit of the 80s. So I didn't really appreciate it because, first of all, I was a kid who had no business in watching movies like that. So it felt like a little boring to me. And then after going to film school, I rewatched it, and it's like, oh, these relationships are important, and it's not just about a girl peeing on a floor. Okay, I understand.
On that note, number 4 was the original The Omen. This has always been one of my favorite horror classics. Like CP just kind of talked about, I kind of grew up watching a lot of movies from the 80s. That's where a lot of my horror love goes. So there's only a few 70s horror movies that I love on the level of a lot of 80s movies. A lot of those movies would fall into that I appreciate more than I enjoy category that I always bring up. The Omen is one of the few that I genuinely just love. I think it's a great movie. I love that the slow reveal, the slow mystery of what's going on, like Sean was talking about earlier, what was missing from the remake, to where just the concept alone, especially as a father, of your kid is going to destroy the universe. What are you going to do about it? And done it in like the most gruesome way. It's not heightened. It's not glorified for a Hollywood big budget picture. It's real. And from the whole movie is slowly peeling back the onion of the nun hanging herself, and then the dog shows up out of nowhere. Then you get this creepy ass nanny that comes along, who might even be the creepiest character in the movie. And slowly throughout, things start happening around this kid where he's not like this big slasher villain. He's not out killing people, pushing them off ledges. It's just things happening around him. And so it's just always been a horror classic to me. I think that it's creepy. I think that it still holds up today, with the exception of some of the acting approach. I don't dislike what Gregory Peck does in this movie, but it's a very old school form of acting that that's the one element of the movie that I think can age, if anything. But I absolutely love The Omen. It almost came in at number 1 for me. It was very close. Sean, this was a first time for you, wasn't it?
It was. Sean had not seen this one before, which was just kind of one of those weird, much like Poltergeist, the other movie I hadn't seen. It's weird that I hadn't seen it. It's Richard Donner film, and this movie's how we got the Superman gig. So it's been on my list of like, why haven't I seen that for 20 years? Mm-hmm. And then finally I got to watch it, and I ate it up. I wasn't sure if I would, because just the pacing of movies from the 70s is different. Mm-hmm. But I think just something very compelling about that central concept of what if you had this child that you discovered was in fact probably the Antichrist. What would you do? And it just does a great job of building that intrigue with the mystery and the growing sense of dread and doom. And even as he's doing the investigation, his wife is getting killed. Mm-hmm. And it just keeps escalating till you get to the end. And just even the fact that the kid is like so innocent yet creepy at the same time. It just finds that balance. So I ate this one up, and have spent the last month tormenting my wife, suggesting that maybe one of our kids is the Antichrist. Jennifer, look at the hair, and just draw 666 on their head. And, Jennifer, it's right there. It's the mark of the beast. That's actually why I have matches, in case I have to set one of my children on fire.
Very effective. Very effective. CP, why does The Omen pale in comparison to the classic of Damien Omen II?
Again, it's just it's my personal timeline. I saw the 2006 version first.
Waiting to see how that was going to work out.
I saw the 2006 version first, so I knew what to expect. Like
Hello?
Sean said, hi. You know, in comedy clubs, they're not allowed to talk when the person with the microphone is speaking.
I've got someone banging on my door. Hang on.
What is this? Everybody knocking everybody else's house door? House door. There's terms. Like Sean said, pacing was a little different back then, so it's just personal preference. It's a little slower. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from it. It's in my top 10. I enjoy it a bit, but you know, I saw the wrong version first.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Moving on to Poltergeist number 3. If Brian's kid would float right now, that'd be perfect. But anyway, Poltergeist, this was a movie that I had definitely seen before, but I have never watched the whole movie start to finish. This was something that I had seen pieces of it all throughout my life, to where I've seen the whole movie, but just never had an isolated experience. And I was shocked how much I loved this when I watched it for this ranking. I sat down. It was in my bedroom at night. I just watched it, and it was one of those movies that I thought had a great balance of being genuinely creepy and eerie and weird, but also having that kind of Amblin Entertainment classic appeal to it, which is why I understand why almost just as much as the movie itself, the whole legacy is whether or not Tobe Hooper directed it or Steven Spielberg directed it. And it very much feels like a collaboration, if nothing else, of those two styles. But the family was great. The slow escalation of, you know, the tree coming, or the TV, and then the tree, and then the clown, and then all of a sudden the graveyard just comes out of the pool. The reveals at the end about why all that's going on. This is an absolute classic that I kind of immediately kicked myself in the ass for not watching more often, because it shot all the way up to, what did I have it at? Number 4? Yeah, shot all the way up to number 4 for me. And it's a movie that I have not really even watched part of since the late 90s. So I was in love with this one. CP, I'll start with you after that.
Your exact sentiments. I hadn't seen it in decades, and all I remember it as is the They're Here movie. And if anything from these 31 movies that we watched this year, being able to rewatch the original Poltergeist, I actually am so glad we did this, because I thoroughly was shocked that I enjoyed it as much as I did. It's like you said, it's perfect 80s Amblin stuff. It's right there with, I mean, shit, the same year as E.T., Back to the Future. It has that feel where it's scary, yet you could probably still show it to your kids, and you know, just
I did.
Good for you.
Damn right.
Yeah, it just clicks all the right buttons, man. It's number 2, but 2. What else do you want to say?
So Sean had never seen this one before, and it was one of those ones that he knew was a very weird omission in what he'd watched. Because obviously Spielberg, favorite director, and the nature and all that fun stuff. So, watching it for the first time with his 7-year-old, it was exactly what he hoped it would be. Just as good, captured that vibe. It was lived up to its reputation. No reason he hadn't watched it before, just hadn't happened, and watched it with his 7-year-old, and so they rewatched the face peeling scene over and over and over again.
Yes.
So, parenting.
Yeah.
Me and
Well,
Sean
101.
One
Me and-
gripe. Sorry,
Go
one
ahead.
gripe. The fucking teenage daughter messing around with the workers in the backyard. What was
And the mom
that? And the mom's
not
like,
being mad.
oh,
Oh,
the
you.
workers. That part was just like, what? Sorry.
Brian, any thoughts to add on Poltergeist, or do you want to just dive into The Shining?
Just, I had a recurring nightmare as a child, and I never realised before that this film it came from this film. So I saw this film when I was very young. So Sean, well done showing it to your kids. I saw it when I was very young, probably about 7 or 8. All I remember was the face peeling scene. That's literally all I remember. That really stuck with me.
I wonder why.
Around the age of 8, 9, 10, I had this recurring nightmare of like that black and white fuzzy stuff on the TV when you're not on any station, just kind of being all around me, and just hearing voices like all around me that were, I couldn't quite hear what they were saying, but it was freaking me out. And like, yeah, it's clearly came from this film, from when she's looking at the TV screen and all that stuff's coming out. But basically everything else you guys said, I second.
There you go. Well, we're going to talk about these last two together because they pretty much bleed right into each other. Our number 2 was Dr. Sleep. So Uncle Sean had that the highest.
Can I start
Bryan
Yeah.
had it at the correct placement at 2, and then number 1, almost definitively.
Sean.
tried to destroy everything. We had The Shining at number 1. So I'm gonna let Bryan lead this one because I know The Shining, I believe, is your favorite horror film of all time.
I will just start by saying, it was watching Sean's 31 on 31 that I really gained a new respect, actually, for
Sean?
difference of opinion.
No.
Yeah.
Like I've always championed difference of opinion anyway, but there is, even I will say, like, when we were going into this, anyone who doesn't put Shining number 1, you're smoking crack. You're off your faces. But then hearing like your reasoning, Sean, for why you put why you put Doctor Sleep above The Shining, I can really appreciate now why somebody would say, yeah, they like it more. And it just goes to show that there's so much subject. You put that down. Put that down. He ain't touching that.
I'm trying to indoctrinate him.
Put it down. Put it down. Don't ever touch that stuff, laddie, or you'll end up like him.
Yeah, that's what made me.
He's regular Coke Classic.
Right. So, but I do think there's we do a lot of what we always say, hot takes, but actually there's not hot takes. There's just subjective opinion. Like I would say, yeah, putting Doctor Sleep as far down as at number 1 and The Shining as far down as Sean put it. That's a hot take, but actually it's not. It's a subjective opinion that is shaped by the fact that actually somebody can relate to the main character a lot more in one film than they can the other. What that says about me and Jack Nicholson in The Shining, I don't know, but not much hope for this one here. But no, I do think The Shining is one of the best horror movies ever made, certainly top 5.
All I do now is I picture Bryan like getting the official 31 list of the movies and then just getting that slow zoom, looking out the window, looking really pissed off. Really quick before we go to Sean, sucky opinions. More money. Flanagan's my favorite horror filmmaker, connecting with his stories on an emotional level. David Bruckner is creeping up there, though. Very
I haven't seen The Night House yet. Damn it.
Neither have I. I've heard it's awesome.
The Ritual's good.
Sean, yes, it is.
Yes,
Sean,
that's me. Yeah.
Doctor Sleep and The Shining.
Yes. Yeah, so this is one of these opinions that I talk about a lot because obviously Kubrick is one of the classic filmmakers of all time, but I would say he makes films that are like on a wavelength that's just not how the wavelength that my brain is on. And so I can watch them and be like, I respect this. Of course, it takes a genius to create this, but that doesn't mean that it's moving at the same rhythm that I move. We dance to a different beat, and so like I watch The Shining, and it's filled with all this symbolism and such specifically chosen shots and craftsmanship. Like I see all of that, but also the nature of what he's doing is not wired the way that I'm wired, and the choices with Halloran showing up just to immediately get taken out, and that ending with Jack sitting down in the snow. Come on, Jack, that's a terrible idea. It's cold out. It's
fine.
It's the sort of thing that I don't get out of it what other people get out of it. Whereas when I watch Doctor Sleep, and if you don't know what kind of they're referring to in my take on that one, so the story is all about someone dealing with family legacies, alcoholism, addiction. If you don't know my story at all, my dad died of alcohol, drinking when I was 20. And his alcoholism and some abusive things was so much of my childhood. And then I had my own struggles with addiction that actually led to me starting my YouTube channel. I was unemployed because I was in alcohol treatment. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. And so then the nature of Doctor Sleep is it deals with themes that just are much more resonate with me. Like that it's much, for obvious reasons, you can look at my story, look at this movie and go, yeah, that's why those two things would sync up like that. And then even just if you know my channel, I cover comic book movies and things like that. This is like a comic book movie as a horror film. It's a bunch of people with superpowers, and the older mentor helps the younger superhero in battling evil villain peoples with superpowers. And so just even on a story level, that's that sort of thing with a clear villain that has to be overcome. was more kind of my thing, and that's where I'm kind of coming from on this one. Especially like rewatching Doctor Sleep, and I'd loved it in the theater. It reaffirmed that I loved it even more rewatching it for this list.
CP?
It had no right being as good as it is.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I went in like, Shining sequel 40 years later. Woo! This is not going to be good. And it really was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they didn't force the overlook on you. And when they did bring it to you, you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
this really does connect. I like this.
It was a necessary.
It does a great
part
job
of,
of being.
Right, well,
Yeah.
right, but it could have stood on its own if it if they focused on Rose the Hat and like that was its own thing and they had The Shining and like I was just fangirling out is all. Everything Sean said is basically what sucks about the internet, because when it comes to movies and music, opinions appear to be like worth gold. It's the only thing where opinions are this thing that you measure, and it's not just personal experience. We don't have arguments like this over food. It's not, oh, chicken. What do you mean chicken? Have you had a steak? Bro. We only do this with like art. It's so strange that it's just a matter of taste. But Sean is wrong about The Shining.
I think it's because with art, when you connect to something, it's because you feel like it's a part of yourself.
Yeah.
Like with Sean with Doctor Sleep, he's clearly got a very personal connection to that movie,
right,
for very specific reasons. So it becomes a part of you. It's almost who you are in many ways, and it's just like, so when somebody just comes along and says, it's crap that. It kind of feels like, well, it feels like you don't get me in a way.
Yeah.
It's like you're kind of pushing aside something that is actually a part of me, and if you're not willing to understand that, then it's almost like you're not willing to understand me, which I know is stupid, but I think we do all feel that in some bizarre way. But you've just got to learn to let go of that and say, well, that's fine. It's fine that they don't get that part of me, but.
Yeah, I mean, unless of course you watch something and you love it or hate it, and after about 12 hours you watch it again and completely flip your opinion. Like that's utterly.
Who would do that? Who would do that?
Madness.
What
so
a
yeah,
parable.
really quickly, like The Shining is one of those movies like The Omen from that era. I mean, this came out in 1980, right? So it has narrowly missed the 70s, but close enough. It was one of those more psychological, cerebral movies that even as a kid I always was kind of drawn to it. There was something about it that was so intriguing. And what I love about The Shining is as many times as I've watched it, you always watch it and pick up something different. There's like some different note in there. There's a visual, there's a music cue, like there's always something that makes your brain interpret what you're seeing a little bit differently. And this would not have been my number one before I had seen Dr. Sleep. I think I would have put The Omen above The Shining, just for my own personal taste. But the Dr. Sleep magic is not only that it's a sequel that had no business even being a good movie, let alone an amazing movie, but it's a movie that followed through on everything that The Shining set up in such a brilliant way that it made me love The Shining more. And what's great about it is it's a sequel to the book as well as a sequel to the movie, and it pulls that off very well. And how it does that, I can't wrap my mind around. But,
it amplifies it in the same way that Aliens amplifies Alien.
Correct.
It's just,
Yeah, correct.
like it's just like the Overlook Hotel stuff that's in there. It's there because it's necessary. Because this is a story about someone who's facing the demons of his past. Is he going to become like his father? And he has to go back there. He has to, because he has to put himself in the same position his father was in to some degree, to show us that actually he's a different person to his father. And if you look at The Shining, Jack Nicholson's character doesn't become an evil. He's not a good man who's corrupted by evil. He's a man who is able to be corrupted further because he's already not that nice a guy. And that's what the story's about. The fact that if you have weak-willed kind of heart and mind, evil can take you over. I'm
right here, Bryan. You don't have to speak in tongues.
But Dr. Sleep builds on that. It builds on that, and it shows us that actually no, the son isn't the father. The son can choose his own path. He's not destined to repeat the mistakes of the father. It's just so to go back to the Overlook is very, very necessary with regards to the story thread, and it's perfect. It's as far as you can't emphasize that enough. It's just that this film shouldn't be as good as it was.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
And as a Shining fangirl, the only thing I remember about Ready Player One was when they went to the Shining thing, and I was like, "Holy shit, this looks just like it! That's awesome!" And it was double that here in Doctor Sleep. It was like, how'd they do it? It looks exactly the same. It's incredible. I need to see the bear giving head. But that didn't happen.
Well, on that note, guys, that is going to conclude the 31 on 31 debrief. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. Bryan, quickly, what?
I will just say, because I am aware, with you guys all like being American and all, you might not have seen the European cut of The Shining, which is 2 hours long, and it is actually better.
It's longer or shorter? What?
It's shorter. So I think the cut you guys have and always have had is 2.5 hours, whereas the cut they released in Europe, we didn't get your cut until like about 10 years ago or something. We always had this 2-hour cut. Was
that considered a video nasty? The Shining?
No, it was just I think it was just a time thing. They wanted to get it into a 2-hour movie for European audiences for whatever reason. Don't understand that because traditionally Europe have always gone for longer running times than the Yanks anyway. But it is actually a better film. So the European cut, it's 2-hour version, and there's stuff that they take out that it actually makes it better for me personally.
Yeah, you would love the 83-minute cut of The Godfather then.
All right, guys. Well, check that out. CP's uncle probably has that. If you guys want to check out the European cut of The Shining, just call him up.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for joining us once again. 31 on 31 is becoming something that we look forward to every single year. Like Bryan stated earlier to that question, there is already hints out there for what next year will be. It's already signed, sealed, and delivered. So go ahead and put on your Scooby-Doo glasses and figure out what it is. But we'll start with CP. What can we look forward to in the next week?
I'm juggling. It's either going to be who would like that for the French movie Titane or Titane or however the shit you pronounce it, from the director of Raw. Woman has sex with car. That's all you need to hear. And that's
hey, don't say that while I'm playing with fire. You're gonna burn my house down.
and it goes so much further than that. Or it seems like I'm running neck and neck here. Or the August edition of 1999, best movie year ever. One of those two will be first, and then the other one second.
Awesome. Bryan, what can we expect out of Bryan Lomax Movie Talk over the next week? Got anything down the pipe?
Nothing in the next week. This month is it's just a no-go for me because...
COVID.
No, well, COVID was part of it, but like traditionally October is the busiest month of the year. End of October, but November is the busiest month of the year for me because of something I do. For my actual job. All the editing kind of ends up getting thrown into November, so I don't do a right lot in November. But when I start picking up again on my channel, I will be getting around to all the Patreon stuff that is long overdue. That's going to be my main focus when I get back. So,
gotcha. Seanzy, next week, what can we see at Sean Chandler Talks About or Sean Chandler Plus?
Yeah,
so down house.
If my house survives the stream, got a Ghostbusters ranking dropping tomorrow, and then next week ranking all 60 Disney movies. That's been like a 12-month long project that's gotten very brutal over the last month. And then this is also to signal to people to send me gifts for my 40th birthday, coming a week from Sunday. I'm doing my top 40 favorite movies. So birthday presents are gladly appreciated.
Well, hold on. I have a birthday too. I didn't know we were doing that.
Is it in the next week?
It could be if it means gifts.
But we have the same birthday, November 20th. Send him stuff too.
So as far as this channel, guys, we're right in the middle of the Resident Evil franchise. We got Resident Evil Extinction. It's going to be dropping later on tonight, sometime around maybe 7 p.m. or so. Ghostbusters Afterlife, I'm going to be heading to right after we get done with this stream, doing a ranking on Saturday, and then finishing up the Resident Evil franchise next week with the new film. So all Resident Evil stuff with the exception of the nugget of Ghostbusters to close off that series. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, we love you. We'll see you next time.